We are going live.
Okay. This is the Westfield City and Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission meeting for February 1st, 2021. I will call the meeting to order. Can you call the agenda, please?
Ms. Berkman?
Here.
Mr. Graham? Mr. Horke?
Here.
Dr. Kelleher?
Here.
Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here?
Oh, is that Mr. McCarty?
Yes, sorry, I'm unmuting myself.
Fine. Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
And we'll try Mr. Graham again. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is the election of officers for the year 2021. First of those would be the president. Do I have any nominations? If I don't hear any from the group, I would like to nominate Bob Horke as president. Do I have a second or any discussion?
Jenny, this is Kristen. I'll second that.
Thank you, Kristen. I have a motion by Jenny Kelleher and seconded by Kristen Berkman to nominate Mr. Horke for president. Do I have any other nominations? Hearing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Graham? Oh, he is not here. Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Maui?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Next on the agenda is the appointment of vice president. Do I have any nominations for vice president?
Yes, this is Kristen Berkman. I would like to nominate Jenny Kelleher for vice president.
I have a nomination by Kristen Berkman for Jenny Kelleher for vice president. Do I have a second or any discussion?
This is my second nomination.
I'm sorry, who was that?
This is Andre Maui. I'll second that nomination.
All right, thank you, Andre. I have a motion by Ms. Berkman, a second by Mr. Maui to nominate Jenny Kelleher for vice president. Do I have any other nominations? If not, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. At this point, I will now turn the meeting over to President Horke.
Thank you. Item next is the approval of minutes of our December 21st, 2020 meeting. Or a meeting with
McCarty will
only
motion.
2 items on the agenda. It was a fairly lengthy set of minutes.
Sorry.
Anybody
McCarty
care
will
to?
motion
Okay,
approve.
we have a motion. Do we have a second for approval of our minutes?
This is Maui. I second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, would we please call the roll to confirm approval of these minutes?
Can you confirm who made this motion?
McCarty.
McCarty, thank you. Okay, Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui,
Yes.
Yes.
carries.
Motion or the minutes are approved. Would staff please review the rules and procedures for tonight's meeting?
Yes, due to the COVID-19 emergency as declared by the Governor of Indiana, the format and conduct of the meeting has been modified to comply with executive orders regarding the conduct of public meetings, public hearings, and public gatherings. Relevant portion of the Indiana open door law have been amended or suspended during the pendency of the emergency. For tonight's meeting, all petitions will have the following structure. The department will summarize the petition and describe what action, if any, is necessary to be taken. Then the petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present to the Plan Commission. The president of the Plan Commission will call on each member to provide comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition. The petitioner will then have a chance to respond to comments. If a member of the public has any comments regarding a petition, they should be emailed to planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded on to Plan Commission members and the petitioner. Additionally, for this meeting, we have offered an opportunity for in-person public comments located at City Hall. So any members who are present there will be called up to speak from that location. A few comments for APC members and petitioners. Please have your email accessible during the meeting so you can read new comments when they become available. And also please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one consent agenda item for tonight's meeting. 2102-DDP-01 Vision Westfield. Is Caleb on the call to explain anything about this, or shall we go ahead and approve the consent agenda? All right, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Kelleher. I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Schmitz will second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Will you please call the roll?
Mr. Horkay,
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher,
Yes.
Maui,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Ms. Berkman.
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you. We have one somewhat unusual miscellaneous item of business, a request to suspend APC rules and procedures by Edge Rock Development. Is Dane Crabtree available to give a brief explanation as to why we are receiving this request tonight?
Yeah, this is Kevin, Mr. President.
Kevin, okay.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in on that one if that's okay.
Sure.
So as you Plan Commission may recall, back in December of last year, you forwarded a recommendation to the City Council on the Woods Robinson Briggs Planning and Development proposal. Since that time, the council still has not heard this item, but has expressed a desire to the developer to see some rather significant changes to at least one of the project's districts. And indications are the developer seems inclined to make those changes. So with that in mind, staff, council members, and our legal team felt that these changes warranted a visit back to the Plan Commission. So mechanically and procedurally, we feel like one of the quickest ways for the petition to get back in front of you would be to withdraw their petition and file a new petition and go through our process again. According to your rules of procedure, under that scenario, it says a new case involving the same property that was subject to a case which has been withdrawn by any petitioner shall not be placed on the docket for consideration within a period of 3 months after the date of withdrawal. So the petitioner's request tonight is to suspend that rule so they can file immediately and begin this new process this month. So according to the Plan Commission rules of procedure, a suspension of any rule can be done by the Plan Commission at any meeting by a majority of vote of the members present. So for tonight, since we have 6 members present, that would be we would need a vote of at least 4 members to affirm this suspension. So with that, I believe the petitioner is on the call this evening and wanted to make a few comments, and then we can open it up for further discussion.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to listening to the petitioner.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations to Mr. Horke and Dr. Kelleher. Well deserved. I appreciate your time this evening. And for the record, my name is Jim Ake. I reside at 543 Potomac Court, Westfield. I'm here tonight on behalf of Edge Rock LLC. My remarks will be brief. Staff spoke about why we are here due to informational feedback we received after your favorable recommendation to City Council. We wish to make changes, and procedures dictate that we need to write a new PUD ordinance to incorporate those changes in response to that feedback. Edge Rock Development LLC will remove the new suburban rentals from District 2 and replace them with single-family 1- and 2-story homes. That eliminates 300 rental homes with this change. This change results in a reduction of somewhere between 110 to 150 housing units, which then gives us an overall reduction in density in our project. Changes being made are council-driven, as staff said, and the reason we are before you tonight. This request deals with procedural matters. We respectfully ask for you to allow us to withdraw our current APC recommended ordinance and to request you suspend the rules and vote to waive the 90-day waiting period normally required as stated by staff. Your approval tonight would allow us to write a Doewoods Robinson Briggs PUD with changes and have it go before City Council for an introduction at their next City Council meeting, after which it would come back to you for a public hearing and your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I think between the two explanations, that's fairly clear, but is there any concern or question from the APC that needs further explanation?
This is
Doesn't-
Kelleher.
Oh, okay.
I am fine with the explanation.
Okay, would you like to go ahead and move to suspend this APC rule of procedure?
Does anyone else have any concerns before I do that? Because I'm happy to do that.
No, this is Maui. I'm with both of you, as you've said, that the explanation makes sense. Prior to the explanation tonight, having just read the document, I was a little leery because it was a little ambiguous and mysterious to me, but understanding now more what it's about, this makes sense to me, and I think I don't have any issue with it.
Okay. Dr.
Then
Kelleher?
I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the suspension of the rules to allow this to be withdrawn and come back in less time than 90 days.
And this is Maui. I'll second that motion.
Thanks to you both. Could we please call the roll?
Dr. Kelleher,
Yes,
Mr. Maui,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Ms. Berkman,
Yes.
Mr. Graham. Oh. Mr. Horke,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate your time tonight and look forward to bringing the new PUD back before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that likely to be for the next council meeting, or just curious? Do you need more
Our
time?
time schedule will be to make a council introduction February 8th and then come back to you if you have a second meeting in February. If not, we'll go in March. But time is of the essence for us, and we appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you. We'll wait to hear back.
Mhm.
Our item of business following next is Spring Mill Center 2012-ODP-18 and 2012-SPP-18. This is approval for the primary plat and overall development. Are there any questions, comments, or explanation from staff?
Yep. Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. This proposal is for the overall development plan and primary plat review of 4 blocks on approximately 55 acres in the Spring Mill Center PUD. This project is located at the northeast corner of Spring Mill Road and State Road 32. This item received its public hearing at the December 7th, 2020 Plan Commission meeting. Since then, staff has received no comments and the plans are fully compliant. Randy Zintz of Commercial Links and other representatives of the project are here tonight. I defer to the petitioner if they plan on making a presentation, but both the petitioners and myself are available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there,
Good
or is
evening.
there is a presentation from the petitioner, I gather?
No, good evening, Mr. President, members of APC. This is Randy Zentz. There is no presentation.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, are we good or are there questions?
This is Kelleher. I have no questions.
This is Maui, no questions or comments.
Schmitz, no questions, no comments.
McCarty, no questions or comments. Thank you.
Berkman, no questions or comments.
Thank you for going through that. I'll try to remember to just go ahead and call names. Seems like we're all together, but not in the usual way. So we're ready for a motion to approve.
This is Kelleher. I will make a motion to approve the primary plat and overall development plan 2012-SPP-18 and 2012 ODP-18 with the condition that all necessary approvals be obtained from the Westfield Public Works Department, Hamilton County Surveyor's Office prior to the issuance of an improvement location permit.
Thank you. Is there a second? Anyone?
This
Schmitz will
is Kristen
second.
Berkman. I'll second it.
Thank you. Good, staff, please call the roll.
Dr. Kelleher,
Yes.
Mr. Maui,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Berkman,
Yes.
Mr. Horke.
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you all
Thank-
for your time and have a wonderful evening.
You're welcome. Thank you. Moving on, we now have public hearings. First public hearing is for a new Sanders Glen PUD, petition number 2102-PUD-01. Dane Crabtree, is there a introduction?
Yes, good evening,
staff?
Plan. Good evening, Plan Commission. For the record, Dane Crabtree with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is the proposed Sanders Glen PUD, which consists of approximately 9 acres of real estate located on the north side of 171st Street, also known as South Street, north of the intersection of Oak Road. The property is currently zoned the Kalorama Park PUD, an SF4 underlying clustered cottage development, which was approved in 2010 but never came to fruition. The petitioner, Patch Development, is proposing to repeal and replace the Kalorama Park PUD with a new PUD which would develop the site with 3 distinct areas, a multifamily district which would permit only attached units marketed to seniors, as well as 2 single-family detached districts, each with a different lot requirements and architectural styles. This item did have a virtual neighborhood meeting on January 4th where there were 2 public attendees. This item is scheduled for a public hearing this evening, and we have received several public comments that can be seen as part of the public comment exhibit. Andrew Greenwood and Pat Chitenden of Patch Development are present this evening to give a presentation of the proposal, after which they will be available for questions, as will I if there are questions of staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Patch Development representatives, please take the floor.
Yeah, good evening, members of the commission. This is Andrew Greenwood, and Pat Chittenden's on as well from Patch Development. We're located at 400 Alpha Drive in Westville, here tonight presenting the Sanders Glen PUD. If you can switch the slide, the subject site, as Dane talked about, is approximately 9+ acres located at 2432 South Street or 171st, just south of the Midland Trace Trail, east of phase 1 of the cottages of Sanders Glen and the Sanders Glen Health Care Facility, north of 171st Street and west of the City Services Building. In this slide, you'll see the zone. If you back up there, yeah, thank you. You'll see the zoning map, which is the current zoning of the Colorama PUD, the MF2 zoning for the Sanders Glen site, the reserve on south, et cetera. And the next slide, you'll see what kind of the uses are of our neighbors. And around us, we have single-family residential to the north, nursing home and hospital to the northwest, single-family residential to the west, residential, and then commercial adjacent to the west and commercial adjacent to the east. If you go to the next slide, we have the adjacent properties and some view sheds of what that looks like from our property. So this is a view to the west of the Pheasant Run subdivision. The next slide shows a view to the east of the Newbie property that includes a cell tower, a trucking logistics company, and a lot of floodway ground. The next slide, as you continue, shows the Sanders Glen Healthcare Facility to the west, and the following slide shows the property just due west on the southern portion of our property that has commercial uses there as well, multiple commercial buildings. We are proposing to break this site into 3 different distinct areas. Area 1, as you can see, is single-family dwelling units. Area 2 is also single-family dwelling units, a little bit larger lots, and then the Area 3 is the senior-focused units as well. If you can continue to progress, it's the 26, 14, and 50 units would be the maximum that would be allowed on that property. If you go on to the next slide, we kind of show proposed elevations. Again, we are rezoning this property and trying to set the standards and elevations and requirements of materials, lot sizing, et cetera, for the future. This is the Area 1 character exhibit. So these are all brick masonry material along with hardy plank, high quality materials, and attractive and nice homes. On Area 1, the same standards would be for Area 2, just larger footprints and larger size housing would be allowed. And then Area 3, as you can see, shows our what we call Phase 2 of the cottages at Sanders Glen. Phase 1 is currently under construction to the west of the Sanders Glen facility, and that's 27 units. These are same kind of material as what the housing would be required. A brick wainscot along with hardy plank, attractive elevations, and garages and the such. So this is a product that's focused on seniors, trying to utilize the amenities of Sanders Glen adjacent. The next slide here, as we have gone through this and had multiple conversations with staff and also the community members, we've had a variety of comments about what are the amenities, what does the open space look like. So what we wanted to point out with this slide was that this is an infill project. It's working in conjunction with the existing amenities. So the Midland Trace Trail is right there on our northern border. We'll work to have a design to enhance that trail connection. That it'll increase the safety and visibility. We've had a lot of comments and questions about that and what could we do to make that better. And so we've talked about enhancing that trailhead and also then connecting from that trailhead all the way down to 171st Street so that there would be access and a trail that would connect the Midland Trace Trail all the way to the southern portion of the property. We'd also like you to note that the Simon Moon Park is less than 1,500 feet to our east, and the Grand Junction Park and Plaza is 2,500 feet to the west, just there on the trail. These amenities make this a very attractive, it's a very attractive site, and for potential tenants and buyers, we expect a lot of empty nesters and buyers that want to be close to downtown Westfield, but don't want, a large 5,000 square foot home. They're at a different stage in their life, and they don't need the large lot. They would like to be on the trail and be able to walk in or ride their bike, et cetera, to these amenities and utilize them, as well as the proximity to Sanders Glen, where the folks that are in the senior apartments would be able to utilize services there that are provided by the facility. On the next exhibit, we have our revised kind of updated landscape exhibit that shows our desire to keep as many of the trees as we can to the north and the west, along with planting new, and to the south to try and maintain a buffer the best that we can. It's more than a 5-foot buffer. It's an extensive buffer along with the trail that's there, so that the units and residential folks to the west have a standard nice barrier between the two that's landscaped. The last exhibits, if you'll scroll down, we've also had a lot of comments about density and traffic with our proposed development. And so currently this is a 3-way intersection, and we would be converting this into a 4-way stop sign and intersection until such time as the roundabout would be warranted. We are designed, after working with engineering, we were designed in a way that would work with a roundabout in the future into our property and into this development. And our engineers at Structure Point have been working really hard with the city's engineering department on this. And you can see in here an email from Mr. Nail stating that there are no concerns about traffic at this intersection with it being a 4-way stop. So in summary, we thank you for your time and look forward to any of your questions you might have this evening.
Thank you. We will move on next to opening the public hearing. There have already been, I believe I see 8 written comments received prior to the meeting. I don't believe we've had any since the meeting. There may be folks at City Hall that would like to take this opportunity. So I'll open the public hearing at 7:27 p.m. Do we have any comments at City Hall or otherwise?
We do not have any public commenters on this petition at City Hall.
Okay.
And we have yet to receive any emails. However, maybe give it a minute and we'll see what comes through.
Sure. Yeah.
One email did just come through for this petition. I will forward it on, but it's very short, so I can read it aloud as well.
Okay, please do.
Martin Kirkwood says he has concerns with the density of housing in this planned development. This seems to be totally out of character for the surrounding neighborhood communities.
So noted. We'll loiter just a little bit longer in case there's people that type at my speed that haven't finished their thoughts yet. Once my clock clicks over to 7:30, if we have not received anything else, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and move on to Plan Commissioner comments, and we'll go through them in alphabetical order. So Kristen Berkman will be first up, and Dr. Kelleher can be in the on deck circle. I see we do have the forwarded email from Pam Howard. Okay, my clock now says 7:30, so we will close the public hearing and move on. Kristen Berkman, do you have comments you would like to bring up at this time?
Thanks, Bob. I do have a couple. I am in agreement with a lot of the input from the neighbors on this one. I believe this is way too dense for this parcel. And I'm a little bit confused on the strategy also on this parcel, as there's somewhat of the senior living. Anytime that comes up, the question is it truly age restricted? Because I know there's a lot of guidelines that go with that. So we're throwing that term around on a lot of these different developments, but I'm wondering, is that section truly age restricted is one question I have. And then secondly, as we talk about empty nesters and that type of thing on this parcel, there's a lot of two-story homes that are being depicted in character exhibits. So I'm not sure how that goes with kind of, single flooring housing as people age. But I guess my biggest concern is this density on this parcel. And the original, if I'm saying it correctly, Kalorama PUD was very interesting. I thought that was just a really creative approach to this parcel. And I guess my direction back to the petitioner is I'd much rather see something like that on this parcel that had the 50% open space and so much tree preservation, because right now I'm just not seeing the tree preservation at all on this particular plan. So Bob, I'll leave it at that, but I will type up these comments and forward those to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. And at the end, we'll circle back. If you have anything else you'd like to bring up before this meeting, you'll have that second opportunity. Dr. Kelleher will be next. Andre is on deck.
Okay, Kelleher here. Pam, could you put up the concept plan on the screen, please? Actually, it's the one before that. I think it's the one of the overhead showing what surrounds it. That's it. Okay. I agree with Kristen. There's way too much density here. If you look at the Kalorama PUD from back in 2010, it was quite an astounding PUD. It clustered homes on 3 sections in this parcel, preserved most of the green areas. It was a true infill that worked in this area. And again, this is an infill. And I look at the other infill that's close to it, and it is the one on the north side of 171st Street, just to the west. And it's a lovely little infill project with 2 little cul-de-sacs and some wonderful lots. There are, of course, more residential to the west, just north of that. There is a subdivision to the south, to the north. And I don't see this as fitting in with those surrounding areas. The density is way too high. The product that you're talking about putting along the western border, the fairly high density product, you have, I think, 25 of those just to the west of Sanders Glen. And I think that's an appropriate area for them. It's on a major street, Cherry Street. It's a smaller section, so there won't be as many people, and I think it fits in there very well. I don't think that type of housing fits on this parcel at all. So the density is way too high. There's not any preservation of any green space or anything in this area. It doesn't fit with the surrounding area. And the original Kalorama PUD, which I wish could be built because it was lovely, had 40 dwelling units, 50% open space. This goes up to 90 dwelling units and pretty much no open space except for the pond at the north. So I certainly would consider something closer to the Kalorama, but this is just way too dense. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Andre Maui is up and Victor McCarthy is on deck.
Yeah, thank you. This is Maui. So You know, I read all the documents over the weekend with great interest, some of them twice on this to try to sort through where I am. And I'll just say right now, I'm still on the fence. You know, I have an appreciation for the concerns about density. I also am kind of struggling in my mind to determine as an infill what fits and what doesn't, and looking at the surrounding areas. And it's like, this area is kind of a crossroads of a variety as it is. And so I'm not going to say anything conclusive on where I am tonight because I don't really know yet. I'm still sorting through. I'm going to have to study this one a lot more. But I appreciate everybody's made comments and all the petitioner's documents as well. So that's just kind of a summary, I guess, on where I stand so far. And that's it tonight.
Thank you. Victor is up and Dave Schmitz is on deck.
Victor here. Kind of keep it brief as well. I'm in agreement with everything that's been said so far. Again, hitting the high density aspect of it. It's just, that is a lot for that area. Something that has not been mentioned yet that I've seen reading through all the public comments that were sent to us that are available is having a second in-out connection. I think that is something that should also be considered as well. Safety is always something that should be priority, and just having one in-out there on 171st, I think, you know, it's a missed opportunity not to have a connection there on Sanders Glen. One neighbor mentioned it being Sanders Glen Boulevard, whatever it be named, just because, again, if you're trying to be cohesive with the area, then that would just make sense. Yeah, without repeating too much of what's been said, I share all the concerns. So,
thank you. I will weigh in as well that without getting belabored in repetition, I'm sensitive to all of these issues and would struggle with approval without some significant changes. One kind of unique thing that I've been kind of concerned about is a trail crossing, that if the units that are crafted to attract people as part of the Sanders Glen community need to interact with Sanders Glen staff, get to their building for services, how does that work? Is there some sort of transportation that's anticipated? Are these folks expected to get their own way back and forth? How much interaction is really going to be a part of what those folks are in that neighborhood to benefit from? And I would not want to see a lot of uncontrolled traffic that starts to then become a problem for our Midland Trail crossing. So I see the connectivity piece right there as being kind of a big concern. Like others, I've driven by the site numerous times since 2010, kind of picturing what Jim Anderson had presented, because it was really an incredibly cool neighborhood. I remember him describing it as not being the most expensive housing in Westfield, but it was going to be the most expensive per square foot, was his intention, and how he would really design some spectacular modest sized residents that would all be his design so they could be clustered together and not have window looking into window between neighbors and things that would become problematic for things like that. And it just seemed like such a wonderful thing to have. And I've been very disappointed it wasn't able to occur. So apparently it's not going to after all these years. So, you know, we'll need to entertain this further, but echoing everything and adding my additional 2 cents worth. So quickly, we'll go around the horn one more time. Kristen, anything further? And then we'll let the petitioner address whatever notes they've taken if they are so inclined.
Sorry, no, I'm good. I'm sorry, I may have missed Dave if he had comments. It may have cut out. Maybe he said he didn't. I don't know.
He can recap when we get back to him. Dr. Kelleher, anything further?
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple things. Number one, I think it's important to look at the original Colorama PUD. And if you go to the link that Dane provided in his staff report, it will take you 3 documents. It's the third one down that actually gives you the PUD. The others are just odds and ends of something else. So it's the third reference down in that link. And I think you all need to look at that. The other thing on this one is these are rental units. And I'm not sure that 50 or whatever rental units, however many there are in this, is again, a really appropriate infill at this location. That's all.
Thank you. Andre, round two, anything quick?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Sure. Victor, any quick additional thoughts?
Yeah, just because these haven't been mentioned yet. Briefly, with the amenities, all that I heard mentioned was that is what is already in the surrounding area, Midland, availability of Grand Junction, Simon Moon. You know, if there's going to be amenities, would there be amenities within the PUD itself? And then just one more. I know Jenny kind of touched about it with the cottage design. When we had that presented to us at BZA, one thing that was not included in being approved, it was not included, was an age restriction. So I would just like the petitioner to touch back on that, because when you're adding 50 lots and not just what is already being built, I think that does change the game a little bit of having 50 unage restricted lots that are being targeted to age restricted. But if that is not implemented into it, then what may or may not happen. So that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Schmitz?
Yeah, my comments would have been touched on. My concerns have been touched on by others, so I don't really need to belabor it. Although overall, I think that this plan could have a lot more creativity to it, and I think our affinity for the Colorama plan, even though it's obviously not before us now, but that has some of the elements of creativity that takes advantage of the elements that this site offers far better than what we see tonight, at least in my opinion. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn back to the development team. Are there things that you've heard in this dialogue that you're able and would like to address tonight?
Yeah, we first off, we appreciate the comments, and you know, I think we want to express our desire to make sure that this is a quality development and that it does work with the community and the surrounding elements. And we've already made a pretty big investment with the units to the west of Sanders Glen, and so, you know, our desire here is to continue that investment. When we made that original investment, we did a market study, and it called for over 250 of these units in Westfield. And at the time, before we started that, there were zero in the whole entire city. So we feel like this is a needed product that Westfield doesn't have and is there. And the reliance on the Sanders Glen facility is a big one, because that's for these senior-focused units, and I'll get into the whole age restriction conversation, but for these senior-focused units, those are the amenities that these tenants or renters are going to want, right? So they are going to participate in the activities there, the different activities that they have in the assisted living facility. A lot of times we will have a couple, and one is in the assisted living and one is not needing those types of healthcare needs, and so they'll live in this unit to be close by, whether they have a dementia issue or memory care issue or whatever it may be, and this allows them to not have to be, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 miles away. They can literally be right next door and be with their loved one, but not be in the actual healthcare setting. So a lot of times that's what we see. In terms of the age restriction, our desire is to stay away from restricting it as over 55, and the reason is sometimes we'll have a child or a sponsor of one of our renters who needs to stay with the individual or wants to stay with them, and so we don't want to preclude that from happening. But the way that we kind of ensure or make sure that these units are used for, you know, folks that are over 55 or need these services is the way that we price these units and the services that we provide. These units include all the utilities are included with it, along with the price of utilizing the amenities over at Sanders Glen. So the cost is usually cost prohibitive for someone who is not in that stage of their life. So we don't ever see a 25-year-old, not that there's anything wrong with 25-year-old renters, but there aren't a lot of 25-year-olds who are going to pay $2,000 for a unit that is specifically designed to utilize the facilities of an assisted living facility. So that's how, in a practical way, we prevent that from happening by doing that. Some of the other comments about, one comment was made about the in and out connection. And while we would love to go ahead and be able to connect to Sanders Glen Drive, if you're looking at this slide that's in front of us, that's actually the Midland Trace Trail. And so it's physically impossible for us to connect to that without, we can't do it. So we have worked with the fire department and engineering to make sure that we have ample navigation and that the roads have the ability where we will not get a fire truck stuck if they're called or whatever the health need is or safety need is. So this has already been presented to both engineering and the fire department, and they have blessed this design that allows the loop road and the access for life and safety responses. In terms of, I think there were some other questions about open space and amenities. I think I've addressed some of that with what we talked about with what's available at Sanders Glen. There've been a lot of comments about Colorama, and you know, while we too agree that that was a nice plan that was, you know, 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, and it wasn't able to happen. And so what you see here tonight from us is our desire to develop a project that allows us to transition and utilize the ground productively. So these units, they're designed to be closest to Sanders Glen so that we can have an ample connection, and the folks that live there can either walk or utilize a golf cart to get to and from the facility safely without putting too much stress on the trail, as well as utilize the trail. And so that's why those units are over there. And it's also a transition because, you know, at the southwest corner, we're adjacent to commercial uses, right? There's 2 commercial buildings. To the east, there's a commercial building and a cell tower, and half of that ground is, you know, floodway and can't ever be developed. So from our perspective, we're trying to do a good transition in this property within itself to try and make this work for the community. I think, Pat, do you have any other comments, anything I might have missed?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Pat Chitenden with Patch Development. I know many of you and live in the community. You know, this is we're talking about zoning and trying to do a mixed use project here. You know, as far as the additional 50 units, the 27 units are already off to a fairly good start. And, you know, there's possibility that we never end up building the 50 units and that there's not a need for this, but we think there is. We might do this in a couple stages. But I think this is something that the community really needs. I've talked to some of the counselors, and they understand that this is something that the community really needs. This is what we would be developing. We are not home builders, so we wouldn't be building Area 1 or Area 2. I think the other point that might, you know, there's significant grade change from west to east, right? So that whole property from west to east falls significantly. And that's why that whole, the newbie property is all wet or floodplain. And so there's not a whole lot of room to develop. I'd also kind of comment that, you know, we are purchasing this ground from Mr. Anderson and talked to Jim a lot about Colorama. And he said, hey, listen, the world's changed. It's the, you know, developments are more dense now than they were. This is close to downtown. And, you know, you can't sell $900,000 houses next to a commercial use like that anymore. It just doesn't work. And that's, you know, why he has not pursued it. And I'm not saying he was building $900,000 houses, but, you know, construction is expensive and everybody can't afford a high-end house. So I think this is a way to take advantage of the market and do some housing that the community might need. So I think we're here as a patron. You know, we want to work with you all on the right fit here, and we think that additional garden home units are something that's really attractive and can work in this community next to Sanders Glen, since our community doesn't have them. So those are my kind of additions.
All right. Appreciate your comments.
Bob,
Commissioners, yeah,
Kelleher here. Can I make a comment?
yeah, I was going to go around the horn again just for any
Sorry.
further thoughts. Well, you can be the lead this
I
time.
can jump in the queue? Okay.
Yeah.
I understand that times have changed. The infill project along the 171st is new. Those two cul-de-sacs are new. And that's the kind of infill project I think is great. While I think the original development was not big, expensive homes. It was small cottage type homes. So it was not high end, expensive homes. The difference was it was nestled in there and buffered enough from the surrounding areas, which have now developed, that those smaller homes and that density didn't affect the people around it. And while the product that you're presenting may be needed, and I'm not objecting to that particular product on this site, I think the number that you have is just way more than should be put in this parcel next to the surrounding uses. I'm done.
Thank you. Andre, final thoughts?
Nothing else. Thank you.
Victor?
Just trying to think how to word this a little bit. I'll say that I heard the word can't a lot when the petitioner was answering some questions and whatnot. And, when it comes to designing a project, I mean, I don't think can't really exist unless there are physical constraints from the land or anything. And then also when it comes to the actual design of the project, I mean, one half of our job, yes, is to listen to the petitioner and hear all the studies that are going on and everything that what the market is desiring. But the other half is listening to the neighbors. And from what we've constantly heard in I lost count of how many messages have been sent, but just hearing, it's too high density, desire to have the second in-out connection, the age restriction, no open space. I'm more inclined to listen to those that have lived there a hefty majority of their life, as opposed to a petitioner that's coming in because they know the area that's best. So that's just kind of where my mind is at. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Dave Schmitz.
Nothing additional from me. Thank you.
Okay. Kristen Berkman.
I would be interested in seeing the study that they referred to. So if they can attach that to the narrative or whatever with staff, I would really appreciate that. And I will just quickly echo what Victor was saying a little bit, that we've had, I think, 4 letters from all the surrounding HOAs, and they're very concerned. And so I reflect that as well, that concerns me as well, because everyone has to be a neighbor in these situations. And so I guess I would encourage the petitioner to be reaching out to those boards. If you're making changes, I mean, that's up to you, but I would definitely be reaching out to these boards and trying to involve those groups a little bit. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't have anything further that I want to elaborate on. I agree with pretty much all of what was said, and we'll await your digestion of all of this information and what it is that you choose to do going forward. With that, we'll move on to the public hearing for Lancaster Phase 2 PUD 2102-PUD-02. Kevin Todd, are you presenting on behalf of staff?
I am. Wait for the exhibits. All right, there we go. Thank you. Good evening. For the record, Kevin Todd with the Community Development Department. This item before you this evening is a PUD amendment rather, proposed by William Trace Development, requesting a change in zoning of approximately 36 acres located at the northeast corner of 186th Street and Casey Road. Change in zoning from the Spring Mill Trails PUD district to the Lancaster Phase 2 PUD district. This project would essentially be an extension of the existing Lancaster development immediately to its east and would include paired villa dwellings and passive open space, as you can see on the concept plan. This item is scheduled for a public hearing this evening, and we have received a few comments which are included in your agenda packet this evening. On the call tonight is John Dobashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger, representing the petitioner, and I believe at this time he'd like to make a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
John?
Kevin. And, thank you, Mr. Horkay. Can you confirm that you can hear me all right?
We can.
Thank you. While Kevin's pulling up these exhibits, it looks like he has them up now. Thank you for your time this evening. For the record, my name is John Dobashewitz. I am a land use professional with the law firm of Nelson and Frankenberger. As indicated by Kevin, the petitioner is William Trace Development. Jesse Pullman of William Trace is on the call, as well as Jim Schoonover, an attorney with our office. As noted, the matter before you this evening is the Lancaster 2 PUD. The subject real estate, as staff noted, is located at the northeast corner of 186th. I don't know if you can run the cursor and identify those streets for the commission, but northeast corner of 186th and Casey Road. As shown on the following exhibit, Kevin, if you can advance to the next slide, this identifies some of the neighborhoods. As shown, surrounding uses to the real estate include the Shelton Cove residential community, Northview Church, and a single-family residence to the south. The William Trace and Waters Edge residential communities are to the southwest. To the east is the Lancaster residential community, which you can see on both exhibits, blown up to the right-hand side, and a bit smaller version as context to the left. And to our north is a parcel which is owned by Westfield Washington Schools. That's the area of the aerial that you see between the Lancaster area and our site, as well as the Emery Trace residential community currently under development on the south side of 193rd Street. And then to the west, across Casey Road, are properties in agricultural use. The applicant has filed a text amendment application to rezone this infill parcel from the Spring Mill Trails PUD district to the Lancaster Phase 2 PUD district in order to develop a residential community consisting of 90 homes that will essentially serve as a continuation and extension of the Lancaster residential community, which, as noted, is immediately adjacent to our east. The Lancaster PUD district was adopted in 2019 and is now under development on the west side of Spring Mill Road. Lancaster was similarly a rezone and amendment to part of the former Spring Mill Trails PUD district, which was adopted in 2011, but never advanced with development in this area. The last exhibit that Kevin has on display now identifies the district as well as the home product. It's as an extension and continuation of the existing Lancaster residential community. The plan will include paired villa homes with anticipated sale prices from the mid-200s. This home product will continue to offer additional low-maintenance housing options for both first-time buyers and those buyers desiring to downsize to an empty nester type of home. The concept plan and character exhibits depicting the conceptual home architecture are shown here and included in the proposed ordinance under tab or Exhibit B and Exhibit C, respectively. As shown on the concept plan, 90 homes are proposed, which is less than contemplated in 2011. The proposed density is just under 2.5 homes per acre, where the plan for the real estate in 2011 allows a maximum of 2.8 homes per acre. Therefore, development under the current proposed PUD would result in fewer homes per acre than permitted under the current zoning. At one time, a church was also contemplated on this site, which the UDO recognizes as an institutional and more intense use of the real estate than the residential proposed today. Regarding home design and architecture, the ordinance includes specific text regulating the architectural standards, including but not limited to building materials, dwelling and garage design, window treatment, and streetscape diversity standards, which exceed the standards of the underlying UDO. The proposed home style is also visually less impactful, with only 1-story and 1.5-story homes. Regarding open space, large natural areas, as shown in the concept plan to the north side of the development, including trails, as well as a couple of pocket parks, are provided for passive recreation opportunities. Open space is also positioned along the perimeter of the site, in particular along Casey Road and 186th Street, with landscaping and ponds as a transition into the site. Active amenities are provided within the Lancaster amenities, which were designed and scaled to serve this development and development on this real estate as a requirement of the prior Lancaster PUD approval. In this regard, the real estate shall be subject to covenants and restrictions applicable to the Lancaster amenities so that all residents share in common maintenance and enjoyment of the active amenities within Lancaster. In conclusion, we appreciate your time tonight and will remain available to address any questions the commission has. We understand that at the conclusion of consideration this evening, that we'll work with staff to address any outstanding items and then return to the Plan Commission at a future meeting to seek your recommendation onto the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on and open a public hearing on this matter at exactly 8 p.m. We have already received 2 emails from the same party. It doesn't appear that there's anything else that has shown up yet during the course of the meeting. Are there any additional emails or are there any live bodies at City Hall that would like to comment on this petition?
There are no live bodies at City Hall which wish to comment on this.
Okay, we will keep the public hearing open briefly here to see if there are any folks typing fast and furiously to send us a comment. And when we move on to commissioner comments, we'll start in the middle of the pack with Andre Maui and go around the horn that way. So be queuing up your thoughts.
Hey, Mr. President, excuse me, we did receive one email. I will forward it. Oh, looks like Pam beat me to it. It should be in your inbox.
Did just show up in mine at 8:01 p.m. Do all the commissioners have this email? It's only a sentence. It's from a nearby resident, Chris. Okay, it's from a nearby resident, Christopher Larson, wants to know if this takes away amenity from the Spring Mill Trails PUD. He is a resident in William Trace. Amenities in neighborhoods in this whole Spring Mill Trails area has been a pretty long-running topic of discussion. If there is an explanation that somebody on staff can provide, that would be helpful. But once we close the public hearing, we'll give it another minute. My computer clock is showing 8:03. When it clicks to 8:04, if we've not received anything, we will close the public hearing and then move on to comments from Andre, followed by Victor and Dave.
Mr. Horke, I'd be glad to address the question about the amenities if that's appropriate at this time or after Plan Commission comment.
Let me close the public hearing shortly, and then we'll go ahead and get that question answered and go to the commissioner comments. I do show 8:04 now. We'll close the public hearing, and let's get that explanation and then the commissioner comments.
Kevin, can you roll to the prior exhibit, please? So the area to our east, to the east of the area outlined in yellow, which is the subject parcel, is the Lancaster development. And if you can circle that, Kevin, there's a, with a cursor for everyone, there's an amenity facility within the Lancaster Plan Unit development. And that's located centrally to the Lancaster development. That amenity facility, when Lancaster came in 2019, About that same time, things were getting settled out on the south side of 186th Street, and Mr. McCarty may be aware of all that. The William Trace neighborhood, Shelton Cove, Spring Orchard, Water's Edge, all participate today in an amenity facility that was constructed further to the south, and that's in District 2 of the original PUD. This site would not participate in those amenities and would participate in amenities that would be constructed as part of the Lancaster PUD along with Emery Trace. So I hope that clears up. The one individual is likely a resident to our south and wonders if this area will add to the number of people using the amenity facility to the south, which it will not. It'll participate in the cost and enjoyment of amenities constructed to the east.
Thank you. Andre Maui, comments, questions?
So certainly it's not the only factor for everybody to consider, but the density per acre is a slight reduction. So that's usually good news to most people's ears. I did not have any comments or questions on this at this time.
Thank you. Victor McCarty.
Well, first off, I appreciate you, Mr. Dabasewicz, pointing out my awareness to everything that's been going on. Yes, I haven't said it in a while, but I have lived on 186 my entire life, so I am very aware to everything that has occurred. And with me now living in Water's Edge, even more so aware with all the problems we've had with our Spring Mill Trails PUD amenity center and so forth. So disregarding that aspect with it being taken care of in the main Lancaster PUD, I mean, it's something that I have to continuously mention for this area is just my disappointment with how this area has been developed after the initial plan kind of got shuttered and each area has been developed in its own little way. I mean, quite honestly, 186 hasn't changed in the 27 years that I've been alive, except for it changing from a gravel road to a paved road. And with the amount of traffic that we have on there from the 5 new neighborhoods there on KC Road, plus the Atwater that's going to the north of KC at the T there, and now everything with Lancaster, I mean, it's just going to be a nightmare, given that those roads were not built for this. So that's really just the only thing that I have to voice my concern with is the traffic and just adding more density to the area. Of course, I can appreciate, as Mr. Maui said, the reduction from 2.8 to 2.5. But it's just, you know, the main concern that's hitting our area right now. And a lot of neighbors voice that concern to me since I am on the Water's Edge HOA. It just very difficult, especially during morning hour traffic. So I will stop rambling there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dave Schmidt.
I think generally with the scope of what's before us for this 30 or 40 acres, whatever the amount is, I think I'm generally supportive of it. I think that the land development plan is favorable to what was previously proposed for this section, at least the most recent version. And I'm okay with the product type. I like the open space. Generally, and appreciate the explanation regarding the amenities, since that's been such a sensitive issue over recent years. But I think I generally, from what I see right now, I'm favorable to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman.
Thank you, Bob. I just had a couple of questions. I'd just like to be updated on how you're working with this adjoining neighbor. I know they had sent out in a letter. They'd had some prior commitments, I believe, originally that they attached. And so, John, if you can update us on how you're kind of working with that neighbor, I would appreciate it, because I do have a concern for anybody that they're concerned about their safety. And so an update on that is appreciated. The other thing is in section 6.1 of the PUD under building materials, I believe I'm reading it to say that vinyl siding is a permitted building material. And that seems unusual to me. I thought that we had moved away from that as a community. So if I'm misinterpreting it, if somebody can, either staff or the petitioner can discuss that, I would appreciate it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher, and then we'll go back to John to respond.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kelleher here. I have 3 questions. Number 1, in the original PUD as written, there is nothing stating how many dwelling units. John, I know that you mentioned tonight it would be 90. If you could put that in the PUD, that would be appreciated. Most of our PUDs have a number of dwelling units. And with our SFA ordinance, I think it is per acre, which would allow something like 140 or something. And that's not what you intend to do, I think, because a lot of that northwest portion is land. But if you're going to do 90, I appreciate that. Number 2, one of the council members asked me to ask this tonight, as the homes back up to Casey Road have no enhanced architectural character, which is what we normally do when homes back up to a road. So you might think about that, because I think you will be asked about that in the future. And number 3, in the PUD, it says you are not going to put in any buffer yard. And 80 or 90, I'm getting close to the page, so I can understand that, who lives in that one parcel, and you surround around 2 sides. So no buffer yard is not an acceptable position, at least for me to take in your PUD. So hopefully you are just not at that point and haven't done an arrangement with her family. I think that.
Jenny, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
I'm not sure
I'm
about
here.
anybody else.
Done.
Okay, I was having a lot of difficulty trying to hear you. I'm not sure what changed about your connection. Maybe I'm the only one that was having trouble, but did everybody get the detail, or at least just of Jenny's comments?
I had the same issues that you were having, cutting in and out, but I caught the gist.
Okay.
Okay, maybe I should ask the question differently. Does anybody want anything repeated?
I quickly, John, do you hear me?
Yes, I've got him, and I can address it at the conclusion of the comment.
All right, and I'll lateral to you.
Go ahead.
Do you have something else, Jenny?
I'll hear if John's going to address me and
All right, I'm honestly not exactly sure what that was, but I'll weigh in first before lateraling to John that I don't have tremendous issues with what's presented. I think there are some things that do need to be addressed, particularly in making certain that we are working harmoniously with the adjacent property owner to the south. All the other explanations make sense, and I believe it's something that is a use for the property that was consistent with what we were anticipating in large part. So I'll end it there. John, if you have some things that you can address based on our comments, please do so.
Yes, sir. Ms. Berkman asked about a couple items working with the neighbor, and that was regarding the comment also that Dr. Kelleher made about the buffer yard adjacent to the neighbors, where it indicates today that no buffer yard would be required. And that's really to address the east perimeter of the site where we back up to the duplexes, and the applicant, and then regarding the Marcusfeld parcel, which is the name of the property owner to our south and east, the applicant, Travis May, Jesse Pullman, and Paul Rio, we've been in communication with the applicant. Mr. Marcusfeld is the son of the property owner there. And we'll seek to provide a buffer solution at that location along the perimeter. And then when we return back to the Plan Commission, we can share that information with the Plan Commission at that time. To give you a context, you can see from the exhibit on display that there's a heavy set of trees along the adjoining property line, and the trees along that adjoining property line. There's also in the area to the north and to the west of the Marcusfeld property, a 30-foot wide sanitary sewer easement. And we have to work around that, as well as what accommodations we can make with regard to additional trees and fencing. But again, we'll meet with Mr. Marcusfeld and review with him what we can do along that perimeter, and then return to the Plan Commission with what we can do there. A couple of other questions that were asked was Dr. Kelleher asked about the 90 homes as illustrated on the plan. Currently, that's not in the PUD. We'll place that number in the PUD. It complied with the requirements of the UDO, which again, as indicated by Dr. Kelleher, would allow up to 4 homes per acre. That's not proposed, and we'll include 90 as the maximum number of dwellings on the real estate when we return. And then enhancements along Casey Road, if staff can identify, everyone can see there where Casey Road and 186th was. We had received some preliminary comments, and I think she was following up on that, perhaps for Cindy Spoljaric. I think Cindy's on the meeting tonight, but understand that the appointment will be made later. There was a request to see some additional enhancements to those homes along that back up to Casey Road or have a side of the home adjacent to 186th Street. We'll reach back out to Ms. Spoljaric and see what her comments are related to that. She gave us a couple of examples of prior petitions that had done some things like that to address enhanced architectural work on that. Those are the 3 items Dr. Kelleher brought up: the dwellings, the enhanced architecture, and the buffer. Kristen Berkman had also asked about working with the neighbor, and then the materials, in particular with regard to vinyl. Kevin, if you can back up to the prior exhibit. So you can see from this prior exhibit that the area of Lancaster to our west, to our east, everything south of the connecting drive between our 2 developments allows the use of vinyl siding, a high-grade vinyl siding, 0.46 mil. That's the same standard that's applied, if you look on the exhibit to our west, of all the surrounding neighborhoods to our south. So William Trace, Shelton Cove, Water's Edge, Spring Orchard, all have the same standard, which requires vinyl, as well as Lancaster. So that's the reasoning behind it. We were mimicking and extending that same standard that was provided to our east onto this parcel of real estate. The last item with regard to road conditions and traffic in the area in general, the City of Westfield collects a road impact fee, and we know those road impact fee dollars are prioritized by the city council administration in making improvements in that area. But I think approximately $3,000 of every home that is constructed goes into the pool of money that have been used in the past and will continue to be used for improvements such as the extension of Ditch Road in the condition which it exists south of 186th Street. And then it's anticipated that improvements will also be made at Spring Mill, as well as 186th Street into the future. But we don't control that. The city really controls that from a prioritization of road impact fee dollars as a community. Those were the items that I heard, Mr. Horke. If there are others that you'd like me to address, we can.
I believe you nailed it. Any commissioners believe otherwise or have any other thoughts? Andre?
Nope, nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor?
Real briefly. But yeah, and I agree with you, John, that it's the issue all along with the road impact fees and improving new neighborhoods is what comes first, the chicken or the egg. And that's just something, again, with this being my backyard, that I see this as a fit time to just advocate for the area, that we do need those road impact fee dollars being implemented, because more specifically on Casey Road, I mean, the width there is about 1.5 car lengths almost. And so with all the traffic that's going to be coming out there, we definitely need to utilize those road impact fees. So when it comes to the precedent that has been set, I know I speak poorly about approving new projects in this area, but again, I haven't been a part of what's been before. As other commissioners have already said, the precedent has been set, and this is just, in my opinion, unfortunately, what does best fit the area. So I just didn't want to leave that not being said, that I do agree with you, John. It's just, in my opinion, unfortunate circumstances. So I appreciate you, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I neglected to mention, but I appreciated others mentioning the giving some attention to the adjoining property owner and also architectural enhancements on the facades that face Casey Road and 186. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen?
I'm in good shape. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher?
I am fine. I think John addressed everything.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We will go ahead now and move on to the Maple Knoll PUD Amendment 5, 2102-PUD-03.
Thanks for your time
Caleb.
this evening on this matter.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you is an amendment to the Maple Knoll Planned Unit Development District, modifying the sign standards. The area is approximately 7 acres and is currently zoned the Maple Knoll PUD District. The area is located at the southeast corner of Spring Mill Road and State Road 32. The PUD amendment proposes modifying the sign standards, specifically the wall signs, drive-through menu boards, and ground sign standards. This item did have a virtual meeting on January 21st. Several members of the public attended with only a comment, to which the petitioners responded to. John Doewoods and Nelson Frankenberger is here to present details of the project, and I'm available if Commission has any questions for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. John, again, the floor is yours.
Thank you. In light of your agenda, I'll attempt to be brief regarding this matter. It's less complicated. Again, for the record, John Doewoods with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner, Panda Restaurant Group, as well as the owner, Meyer Stores LP. Present tonight on behalf of the petitioner is Valentino Mancini of Knorr Architecture and Planning, as well as Jim Schoonover with our office. As noted, the matter before the Plan Commission this evening is an amendment to the Maple Knoll PUD. Specifically, the amendment pertains exclusively to signage provisions of the Maple Knoll PUD as they apply to the outlots within the Westfield Meyer development. The subject real estate is outlined in yellow on this aerial. The subject parcels are located at the southeast corner of State Road 32 and Spring Mill Road and consist of Block A and Block B of the Meyer Westfield subdivision. By way of general background, the Maple Knoll PUD was approved in 2004 and then amended in 2019 to address standards applicable to the Meyer and Fuel Center, which, while not shown on this most recent aerial, are nearing completion on the adjacent parcels. The proposed amendment pertains only to the outlot area as outlined in yellow, and no other property or signage which is part of the Meyer Westfield development or Maple Knoll PUD is included. Regarding wall signs, the amendment would regulate wall signs under the standards of the UDO pertaining to permitted outlot signage. This amendment will regulate wall signs on the subject outlots in a manner consistent with outlot parcels along State Road 32 in the vicinity of the real estate and consistent with the wall sign standards of the Westfield UDO applicable to all businesses. Regarding drive-through menu boards shall be permitted per the standards of the UDO. This amendment specifies that signage for drive-through services shall be subject to the provisions of the UDO as may be adopted in the future. While currently this amendment is not necessary, the city staff asked us to include it as they're contemplating standards in the future that would be applicable to drive-through type signs, and the petitioner was agreeable. Finally, regarding approved ground signs, the outlot users will be permitted signage on the freestanding development signs identified in Ordinance 1950, which was approved as part of the Meyer development in 2019. This amendment adds no new signage and only cleans up and corrects a typographical error in the prior amendment, which was identified by staff. That's the all three different amendments that are being proposed. In conclusion, we conducted, as staff indicated, a neighborhood meeting, which was conducted on January 21st. There were 3 neighbors who attended. We addressed their questions at that time, and it's my understanding that there are no written comments that have been submitted to the Plan Commission for consideration. We appreciate your time this evening and would look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. To my knowledge, we've not received any emails prior to the meeting or since the start of the meeting. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 8:24 and see if there are any forthcoming or if there are any people at City Hall that are interested in making a comment on this.
There are no members in City Hall that wish to speak on this.
Okay,
And as of now, we have not received any emails on this.
all right. We'll give it a minute here to assure that there is an opportunity for somebody to at least say, hey, I'm typing, wait for me. And then if not, we'll move on. Having not received anything, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 8:26. And we'll poll the commissioners for any comments that might be in our group here. We'll start with Victor McCarty.
Oh, goodness. I just really have a question for staff pertaining to this. When it comes to, say, Panda Express or a Blaze or whatever that might come in the outlots that are usually seen with a Meijer, would they be presented to us in our consent agenda for approval since they already fit the PUD?
Yes, that'd be correct. It would be a secondary plat would be filed to subdivide and create a lot for that tenant. And then the detailed development plan would actually be reviewed by staff per the UDO requirements before compliance. And it would only be compliant when you'd see it on the consent agenda.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That is all.
Okay, Dave Schmitz.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman.
No, thank you.
Dr. Kelleher.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Andre Maui.
No comments, thanks.
Jorge completes the circle with no comments as well.
Mr. Jorge, if I might,
Sure.
The director of the department, Kevin Todd, and I discussed this late last week, and he thought it would be acceptable if the Plan Commission thought it was appropriate to make its recommendation this evening in the light that we didn't receive any public comments and there weren't any questions from Plan Commission that couldn't be addressed tonight. We're only asking that. I know you have a heavy agenda, and he felt it would be appropriate maybe to clear off as much as we could if possible.
That is certainly not unheard of. Usually we do get a heads up on it, though. I assume, Kevin, John is speaking accurately on your behalf.
Yeah, that's correct. Sorry about the lack of heads up, but yes.
We'll not hold you to too much punishment as a result. So, commissioners who've heard the request, if everybody is in agreement, can somebody identify themselves and propose an approval or whatever for the Maple Knoll Amendment 5?
This is Kelleher. Go ahead, Victor. This is Kelleher, and I move to approve 2102-PUD-03.
Thank you. Is that Victor that was trying to also approve it?
Yes, sir.
So consider you to be a second.
Yes, sir.
All right. It has been moved and seconded to approve Amendment 5. If there's no further discussion, will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Jorge?
Yes.
Mr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks again for your time this evening.
You're welcome. Moving on to now the Lantern Commons PUD 2102-PUD04. Pam Howard will be presenting on behalf of staff, correct?
Yes, thank you,
President
Mr. President.
Horke, I'm sorry, Pam. President Horke, this is Manny Herzog from Taft. Sorry to interrupt.
Please do.
But I'm viewing the participants, and there are 4 council members, city council members on the call. Unfortunately, as I told my bar review class this morning, gathering of a majority of the council members, even to listen, constitutes official action, which is defined as, among other things, the receipt of information. So before the city gets in hot water, I recommend that 1 or more remove themselves from the call.
Whichever counselor prefers to fall on his sword, please let us know you're doing so and bow out if you're in agreement. Are the counselors actually on the call and able to comment?
This is Jake Gilbert. It's my district. I'd like to stay on the call if possible.
Okay.
Councilman Gilbert, that's up to your other 3 colleagues. I just wanted to make aware that from the city's perspective, this is potentially might get us into hot water. Doesn't matter who it is.
This is Scott Willis. I agree that Jake should remain on the call. I got bumped off the last meeting we had where they discussed this. So I would like to remain on if I could to get the details of this project, since my district actually borders on that road in that corner intersection. So
this is Mike Johns. I've heard this a couple of times. I was at the neighborhood meeting, so I'm going to bow out at this point in time and just ask everybody to take good notes for me. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate your indulgence, President Horke. I will mute now.
That's fine. Please jump in whenever it is important to keep us out of hot water. I don't like that any more than anybody else.
Yes, sir.
So now we are ready to proceed with the Lantern Commons PUD. Pam Howard will present on behalf of staff, and then we will hear from the petitioner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening, we have a proposed new PUD district to be known as the Lantern Commons PUD. This 61-acre site is located at the northeast corner of US 31 and 161st Street and is currently zoned GBPD with commitments that were approved in 2007. The ordinance proposes a mixed-use development which would include multifamily residential and business uses and also includes standards to guide the development of the real estate. This item was introduced at the January 11th City Council meeting. A neighbor meeting was held last week virtually on Thursday. A summary of that meeting has been provided by the petitioner and included as Exhibit 7 on the agenda. This item is properly noticed and advertised for a public hearing this evening. We have received several public comments that are included in the public comment exhibit, which is up to date as of 6:30 p.m. Since that time, we have received a couple of additional public comments, which will be forwarded at the start of the public hearing. I do have Matt Skelton on behalf of the petitioners to make a presentation, after which both he and I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Skelton, the microphones are yours.
Thank you, sir. Can everybody hear me?
Affirmative.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Again, Matt Skelton with Church, Hill, and Antrim with offices at 116 North Union Street here in Westfield. With me on the call this evening is Martin Ing and John Elliott with Front Street Partners. and Gary Perel with ALO Property Group, our local developer partner. We're here this evening. What I'd like to do is I'm going to cover an overview of the project quickly, and then ask Martin if he would introduce Front Street Partners to the Plan Commission and share some more details about the vision of Front Street's vision for the property. And then we have received several neighborhood comments and questions prior to this meeting, and I think I might be able to streamline some of the public hearing by going through some of those items that we covered. We covered these at our neighborhood meeting, but it might help the Plan Commission to hear some of the responses too. And then after that, we're certainly interested in any input, guidance, questions that you folks may have. But we're here this evening to share with you Lantern Commons. It's not a new name for Westfield. As Pam pointed out, Lantern Commons was originally zoned back in 2007. It was envisioned at the time as more of as a commercial center. It was really a retail centric commercial center with inline stores, both larger big box stores and smaller inline stores, and several outlots. Just to give a little bit of context, I think the original zoning allowed for up to 2 users, up to 250,000 square feet in size. And just to put that in to perspective, that's about the size of the new Meijer store out at 32 and Spring Mill Road. This site is interesting. It's about a 60-acre site, which is about 80% of the size of a Village Park Plaza. It is. It fronts on Union Street, on US 31, and also 161st Street. And with the 31 completion of the 31 project, has undergone some changes over the last several years. The proposal, if you folks could put up the concept plan for Lantern Commons, it incorporates the city's thoroughfare plan that extends Westfield Boulevard through this site. And one of the questions we received at our neighbor meeting was, when will the road be constructed farther to the north of the Lantern Commons property? And I won't speak on the city's behalf. I think Mr. Nail may be on the call this evening, but there are no immediate plans to extend that, although the city would contemplate that extension at some point in the future. It's designed to align with what many people refer to as the Poplar Street extension, but it's really, I think it's called Westfield Boulevard today, that extends from 32 down to 169th Street today. So with that, it does accommodate the city's thoroughfare plan and is designed to do so. Just a quick history for folks. This site was originally zoned for commercial purposes back in 2001 by Lauf, and that project never came to pass. And then Lantern Commons again in late 2007, shortly before the recession, completed the zoning of the property. And let me look here. Yeah, the zoning was approved with a variety of commitments that we've reviewed in detail, and really they really pertain to a more retail-centric project. What we have proposed is something really designed with 5 sub-areas that you can see from the concept plan, if we can see that again. There's 5 sub areas, A, B, C, D, and E, Area A is contemplated as assisted living, senior care type use. Area B is illustrated as office use. Area C is illustrated as a low-rise neighborhood commercial use. Area D is shown as hotel destinations, but could easily be used as another headquarter location. The city has indicated an interest in providing some accommodation within this proposal for additional headquarter locations if they were successful in attracting another SEP or somebody like that, similar to the building being built to the south of this site. To ensure the transition of land uses, we've broken the property into 5 pieces, and there's different use restrictions based on those 5 quadrants. The idea being to try to keep the less intensive, more residential-oriented uses, the quieter uses to the north, adjacent to our neighbors in Woodside Drive, and then transition towards the interchange and to the south with more of the more intensive commercial uses. There's some question out there about, what the need is going to be for centralized office buildings going forward, but we are designing this site to accommodate them. With that, I think this is probably a good time for Martin, if you can tune in, if you wouldn't mind, just to kind of introduce yourself and Front Street Partners a little bit, and explain a little bit more in detail what your vision is for the real estate.
Sure, yes, hi. Am I coming through?
You are.
Well, good deal. Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you, members of the commission. For the record, this is Martin Ing with the petitioner, Front Street Partners. I would like to, later perhaps, just give a brief introduction to our company, but just to add to what Matt has explained, we're very keen to propose a sort of a careful, planned group of mixed uses, which provide an appropriate transition across our property from the single family to the north to high density, sort of intensive office commercial with the new SCP development to the south. I think that is probably the most, that's surely what everybody is desiring here, to create something which blends well to these disparate uses on all 4 sides of the property. We would like to propose this mix, this blend of mixed uses, which are on a local neighborhood scale, appropriate to the proportions and the scale of the single family neighborhoods adjacent. This is in contrast to the current zoning entitlement, which Matt's laid out, which permits very high intensive big box retail with substantial parking lots and all adjacent to existing single family neighborhoods. This is a sizable property, and plainly it's very important to the community. Its proximity to the Natalie Wheeler and the Monon Trails, we think are an incredibly precious resource, and they provide a great opportunity to pass, two great opportunities to pass for just an intensive retail or commercial use. We want to be able to incorporate these trails into these mixed uses, which allow the community to freely interchange, to provide utility, maybe convenience for local neighbors, but also enjoyment for the residents who sort of live and work and play within this mixed use and wider Westfield. Multifamily properties are often contemplated unfavorably. Increasingly, multifamily is becoming the nation's desired residence, and it's because of amenity-rich and feature-rich, stylish developments which offer attractive lifestyles compared to perhaps more traditional single-family residences. Our multifamily will be higher end and amenity rich, but that doesn't mean exclusive and unavailable with prices too high for local residents. We want to build high quality. By high end, we mean high quality with features and fixtures that make these lifestyles affordable for younger professionals and working families, even empty nesters. By amenity rich, we don't just mean an attractive pool and clubhouse. We believe we lead the market in integrating walking trails and cycling trails amongst and between the buildings, pocket parks, pet parks, and pet washing facilities. A particular feature that we are keen to roll out in a development in Tennessee that we're working on at the moment, and we wish to incorporate here, is resident allotments and gardens for residents to grow herbs and vegetables, resident workshops for residents to take part in crafts and hobbies. So these are amenities which allow the residents to pursue interests and hobbies which might not ordinarily have been available to them in a multifamily environment, but they allow people to invest in this property and set down roots, which I don't think people have contemplated in the past. So briefly, to introduce our company, we're Front Street Partners. We're a Tennessee company, Middle Tennessee, just south of Nashville. We're 4 partners who've each worked in construction and development for the past 20 years. We're a small focus group, and we work on just 1 or 2 developments at a time. So we're not a large national group who might delegate this to a series of managers and others. We, the 4 partners, will be intimately linked to each stage of this. And so it's important to us that we develop a product that is truly of high quality and is appealing to the residents ultimately of this community, but also the wider Westfield community. We have had some very good feedback from the neighborhood meeting. Obviously, there were some folks who were apprehensive about some of what is proposed. Immediately, there have been some comments which we think are very good ideas concerning the buffering and screening of the proposed location of the Westfield Boulevard connector, as we have labeled it. Screening and buffering that road to the single-family resident community to the north. So buffering and screening, some of the other ideas of minimizing the impact to those neighbors, and we are delighted to take those on board and incorporate them as much as possible. So we are keen to partner with Westfield and our neighbors. And just in closing, would like to stress that this proposal for mixed uses on a sort of a local and neighborhood scale is surely the best solution for this property in this important location in and amongst already different uses, the single family to the north and high intensity commercial to the south. And so with that, Matt, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. Well, and so folks, what I'll do, I think this might be helpful. We've received several comments already, as you have too, and I think we might just try to answer as many of the questions that we received as possible, and maybe that will streamline our conversation here, and I'll try to be brief. One of the questions that we received was, will this Lantern Commons proposal impact the timing of the roundabout construction at 161st and South Union Street? And the answer was no. The city engineer was able to tune into the neighborhood meeting and indicated that he believes that that roundabout project will be completed probably prior to the Lantern Commons project beginning if we're successful here. And I don't want to put words in the city's mouth, so if John wants to chime in, he's welcome to do so. We also received several comments regarding a concern over increased traffic related to this project. And I think the city had indicated that with the improvements that are planned to be completed this year, that their horizon that they have planned for exceeds 30. It's a 30 or 40 year time horizon. And I provided another comment. I think it's worth noting. It wasn't popularly received, but you know, if you compare this proposal to what is already approved by right on the property, I mean, it's a significant lessening of impact. So I think the project you see before you has been on the city's radar for years and has been, you know, planning for something probably more along those lines than the lesser intensive development that we're proposing. We had a question regarding the place where we're showing South Union Street. It actually kind of tees into Westfield Boulevard. Whoever's operating the cursor, if you could identify the intersection where, yeah, right there, Union Street and Westfield Boulevard. That will actually be a two-way stop. There's the through nonstop motion is Westfield Boulevard, and then both Union Street and then the internal street there in that area would be stops. The idea being that the Westfield Boulevard movement would be emphasized and the South Union Street movement would be de-emphasized. So local trips would continue to use Union Street, but ones that were non-local would use the larger thoroughfare. There's a clear sentiment among the Woodside Drive neighbors that they do not wish to have the Westfield Boulevard extension attached to the end of their cul-de-sac. That certainly is beyond the scope of any plans that the petitioner has for Lantern Commons. The city had indicated that is not in the city's plans either. As Martin mentioned, we have received some comments regarding buffering along the north property line, and we intend to revisit our PUD ordinance to see if we can address some of those items after circling back with neighbors in Woodside Drive. So they've been very good to work with. Let's see here. There's a question about will this project negatively impact drainage in the area? And I think if you sit on the Plan Commission very long, you've probably heard that question once or twice before, especially in flat Hamilton County. But yes, we will be, unlike now with the regular sheet drainage of the property in an uncontrolled manner, that probably contributes a good deal to storm flooding events. We will be required, just like every project is required, to capture our drainage and release it at a controlled rate, which should improve conditions during flood events. It may not remedy them totally, but it'll improve them. There was a concern about what impact this proposal may have on property values in the area. And I think if you do any looking around, you can find good examples and bad examples of impacts on property values. We've designed this proposal in a manner that we believe will become an amenity for folks within a walking distance of the property. And I have to point out, I mean, at the very least, it eliminates or removes the risk of a project like the originally approved Lantern Commons from being built, which I could arguably would have a greater impact on property values. We received a question that we really, it caught us a little bit by surprise, but it had to do with, will we be relocating wildlife that may live on the property? And we're looking into that. We don't have an answer right now, so that's on our to-do list. And then there's I think Martin mentioned the Natalie Wheeler Trail. We see that as a huge amenity. There was concern about, making sure we're treating the trail with respect and building along it in a manner that allows it to be an enjoyable experience. And of course, we see it as an amenity. That is our desire as well. There was a comment about wanting us to take measures to avoid or prevent light pollution. And I think the Plan Commission members are probably well aware the city has some pretty significant standards regarding how much light is allowed to leave real estate under the normal standards that apply. But we will look at our standards to see if there's things that we can do that would that we could do to institute to further avoid that. Specifically along the north property line area, there's been some comments received from neighbors. And then there's a desire for us not to tear down all the trees, and we are open to the idea of exploring targeted areas for tree preservation where it can be done. In order to balance a site, it is difficult to do that, but at the very least, we know that there are some preservation opportunities along the north property line. And just informationally, I think many of you may know this, that we're involved with the Pine Tree project that was previously approved, the original Lantern Commons project. But in anticipation of development of the site, the significant tree species were actually harvested. So the trees that are remaining on the site, even though there's a number of them, the larger trees that were healthy have been harvested. So anything on the property that's very big is probably not very old. There was a comment about not wanting above ground parking garages, and I don't know how likely it is that one is constructed, but these are the highest of standards, architectural standards that would be applicable here as contained in the zoning ordinance or the PUD ordinance. If a structured parking was to be provided, it would likely be accompanied by one of the corporate headquarter type projects that the city would be competing for. So we're interested in other people's thoughts. There may be an occasion where structured parking may be needed on the site. And then we received some comments regarding a desire for us to look at, could we impose some standards that would require some level of thematic consistency and maybe signage or architectural, like building materials and things like that. So we will look at that. That was not part of our original contemplation, but we plan to spend time thinking about that. So with that, I don't know if I hit everything, but I probably got.
Jonathan Nail confirmed that.
Oh, okay. All right, good. All right, I think I'll stop talking there if I haven't put everybody to sleep, and we can answer questions or before or after the hearing, and would welcome your input.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure everybody's still awake. As thorough as you might have been, I also am pretty sure that there's probably going to be a couple of comments. So we'll move into the public hearing. It's 8:59 p.m. and I'll open the public hearing. We already have 13 emails that staff has posted in association with the project. And that was as of prior to the meeting. I'm not aware of anything further. And some of the folks at City Hall, perhaps this is where they will raise their hand and say, let me have my turn at the mic. So staff, do we have emails or people to call on?
We do
Yes,
have...
Mr. Jorge, this is Pam Howard. I will forward 3 emails that have been received after 6:30. I will forward those now.
And we do have 2 people at City Hall that I will call up individually to make their public comments. Would you like us to go ahead and do that now, Bob?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and call on them, and you will be taking care of managing things there, including the 3-minute clock.
Okay, first we have Heather Summer.
Good evening. My name is Heather Summer, and my husband and I own 1614 Woodside Drive. It's a 4-acre historic property that was one of the original founders of Westfield. It includes 3 parcels, one of which parcel directly borders this proposed project, and then the remaining 4 acres look upon it. That document is provided in what I provided to APC. I reviewed Front Street's proposal and attended a virtual meeting that included more discussion directly with developers, their lawyers, and nearby residents. Although the proposal appears lovely in appearance, however, we have significant concerns for the suitability of this location for the particular proposed development. And I won't read exactly what I submitted to APC, but I just wanted to highlight the areas of concern. One being environmental. We've mentioned the animal habitat. If you drive down Union Street, you're well acquainted that this is a deer habitat, among other animals. There is a portion of this that falls within a floodplain that was not noted in the proposal. I've also attached that document. This is one of the last remaining forested areas in incorporated Westfield, other than parks. It seems much more appropriate to put a development such as this in a deforested area rather than in, like at the Chatham exit, and then there's also some other proposed areas presented within the document. Light pollution has also been mentioned. As you can imagine, the people that are the most impacted by this would be the only direct neighbors to this proposal, which would be the owners on Woodside Drive. This is a long-established area, and these homeowners have chosen this area because of its wooded nature, the quiet country setting amidst the suburban sprawl. Although the neighbors were addressed within the presentation this evening, when you actually look at the document proposal, there appear to be some strategic omissions of this particular area, at least in an effort to minimize the impact that it may have on residences. And tonight it was mentioned that there would be amenities to the residents, and the amenities proposed, such as apartment buildings, hotels, senior living, none of these are amenities that would be of interest to the neighbors that have homes there. I've also submitted several documents for support that highlights concerns over the road going behind the neighborhood that actually demonstrates the lot lines of Woodside Drive, and also dating back to a 2008 document that says no residents will be displaced. We specifically have highlighted our parcels that are affected, and with our property value being over $1 million, this is the most extensive purchase we've ever made, and it frankly concerns us that it would be in jeopardy with a plan like this. At the conclusion of the information I submitted to APC, you will find a proposed development approach that I believe would be a little more comfortable for neighboring area residents as well as potentially the council. And I think a big part of that would potentially be some type of preserve. The new office complex that is at the corner of this area is being referenced several times in terms of support for why a development like this should approve, but I would like it to be noted that the new SEP example actually does include a forest preserve. And like I said, we've outlined more specifically some of these areas, but wanted to just highlight some of the upper level concerns. And we would caution APC taking definitive action against something that seems very conceptual in nature. Although there are ideas presented, when pressed for more detailed in terms of density and description, those have yet to be determined. Thank you very much.
And we have one other person here, and John Long is coming up.
My name is John Long. I am a resident of Woodside Drive. We moved there in March. We previously lived in a development much like the ones we've seen tonight already, with the Pulte, just kind of cookie cutter homes. I think I'd first start out with just a question to the planners is, I mean, as you drive into Westfield from Carmel, I think what would you want to see when you first come into the city? A ton of apartment complexes, you want to see a hotel, Holiday Inns, La Quintas, whatever decides to go in there. I think the developers keep going back to this 2007 project, which I think we'd all agree Westfield's changed significantly since then. I don't even know if they had stoplights on 31. So I mean, I think the rhetoric is just, well, this is so much better than what it could be or could have been. I mean, it just kind of seems like they're playing our hand where we should just settle for second best, which as a resident and a neighbor, I don't think that's right. I think also, I mean, a lot of things are kind of already been talked about, but obviously we want buffering if this was to go through next to our neighborhood. We'd like for there to keep as many trees as possible. Let's see. The Natalie Wheeler Trail, I'm not sure what, people are supposed to just go down Union and then go through this busy roundabout and somehow cross the street to get around that. I'm not sure kind of what the plan is for that. And the last part is, I mean, I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. We're approving a development that the main thoroughfare is a road that we don't know how or if, according to Matt's comments, isn't even on the docket at this point. So I think we kind of need to take a step back and kind of think what is Westfield's vision for this Westfield Boulevard. I mean, I'm not sure who'd want to drive down the road to go drive through a bunch of apartment complexes and go see some office buildings on the way to Cool Creek. So that's just my 2 cents. So I appreciate it, and thanks for your time.
And that concludes the people at City Hall.
And you should have 4 emails that I have sent you, 3 right at the beginning of the hearing and 1 just a moment ago.
Yep, the one just a moment ago has just showed up in my email. And I assume all the rest of the commissioners have it as well. If there is nobody else at City Hall that is choosing to speak, we have the 4 emails that some of which would take a while to read. We will all do that on our own time, I think is more appropriate than sitting here and reading them during the course of the meeting, but they are in the public record and we will all familiarize ourselves with them. So that being said, I will close the public hearing at 9:09 and we will go round robin with Plan Commission comments, starting with Dave Schmitz.
Did you want to give the petitioner any opportunity to to reply to those last few people?
Yeah.
Or just wrap up at the end?
No, I overlooked that. I think now, because of the nature of how much we've heard, let's maybe give them a little bit of an opportunity to respond to that. Then we'll do our comments and respond further from there. Unless they choose to do otherwise. What is the preference of Front Street Partners team?
I will keep it very brief. Most of the comments that you received, we've already received in one form or another, and I tried to address them. I think the two things that I might point out is that, if you read the city's thoroughfare plan and you read the city's comprehensive plan, what is being proposed today is much more in line with the city's plans that were thoughtfully prepared than the zoning that exists on the property now. That is not an attempt to try to sell somebody something that's second best. This has been designed to be an enhancement to the community and certainly an improvement over the previous vision for the corridor there at that location. But secondly, I think the one thing that I did not address previously as well as I probably should have, one of the comments that we've received from our neighbors, and it's understandable. I think we get it, but when you are a developer and you play the role of a master developer, just like there's a master developer with every mixed use project. Somebody is coordinating the development of the site, the coordination of access points, the construction of roads, things of that nature. It is rare that a single developer would be the builder of every component of a mixed-use development. And it is almost impossible, it's certainly not common, that all of the components of a mixed-use development are known in exact specificity at the time of the entitlement process. And so the challenge then is to develop a set of standards that apply to the real estate that ensure, whatever is built there, whoever builds it, it's going to meet the same high quality requirements. And what you have in your possession in the form of our PUD, converting a zoning with several commitments for a retail center into a PUD for a mixed use development, is our attempt at doing that. We do believe that there are some enhancements that we can make based on the feedback we've received so far. But that is truly, that's the charge, and that is not a new charge. That is not a new exercise for Westfield, or any growing community. So it was pointed out like this is exceptional because there's so much unknown about the project. And really, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't a huge project. This is a 60-acre project, and that's big. But I mean, we know this would be the layout for the most part of the PUD, and the elements of it. We've defaulted to the city's highest architectural standards that it has on the books. And if there's modifications that are needed, so be it. We would love to have your input, but it was our attempt at trying to meet the community's highest of standards.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to commissioner comments, starting with Dave Schmidt.
Okay, I definitely agree with the petitioner that that a mixed use approach is warranted for this site to kind of blend the existing uses and the changes that have happened in that area since the development proposal was made years ago. It's certainly far better. By the same token, I don't think that proposal would be viable anymore in today's world. But I do think that this is better. I appreciate the commitments for a quality development, and to the extent we can verify within a PUD that those standards can be met and carried forth through the development of the site, then that would be vital for my support. I think right now it's just, while, as Matt said, it's not a huge site, it is a sensitive site. It's in terms of its environmental significance, its significance for infrastructure and for the roadway planning. It solves problems, as was mentioned, or at least could get us in that direction. But at least right now, there's just some uncertainty to how that would work, how that would look, and how the surroundings would be affected and the surrounding property owners would be affected. Let's see. I think at this point, I'll just be interested to see what enhancements are made by the petitioner going forward. Because like I say, there's elements that I can appreciate about this, and then there's areas that I'm very concerned about at this early stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman.
Thank you, Bob. First off, I just would like to thank the neighbors that have reached out regarding this parcel. It takes a lot of time and research to do what they've been doing. And it's good to have so many engaged in our community and the betterment and how we move forward. So thank you for your time and efforts on that. I have quite a few comments, and so I will forward those to staff. I just want to give some highlights, though. I'm concerned about the vision of what we see in front of us on the screen right now, which I think has potential, and the language in the PUD. And for instance, there's some language, if I interpret it correctly, that says this concept plan can shift all around. And I think that the city of Westfield and these neighbors, we need to have some semblance of what this could be. And I understand you can't put the name of a company on the office buildings yet. That's okay. But to say that we could shift the multifamily to 161st Street and have the hotel or whatever, there's lots of uses here as well. So as we look at saying hotel, there's a lot of approved uses in that spot that could happen. And so this whole thing for me needs to get tighter and have us understand exactly what's going on here. I would expect for that buffer to the north on the neighbors there to be as good and probably better than whatever the past plans have been. And I know you said you were going to work on it, so I'll leave that one to you. But those people absolutely need an outstanding buffer for something like this. The other thing I'd just like to understand a little more is Front Street Partners, as I tried to do a little bit of research on that company. And I know in the neighbor meeting, there was a discussion on Stonecrest in Tennessee as being an example. I have a question. Did Front Street Partners actually do those apartments, or is that an example of what this could be if the standards actually match in the PUD what's being said? So that's a question for me. And is their primary focus, when I looked at the company, it seems to be multifamily. So I'm wondering, I know you said you'd parcel it out to maybe some other developers, but I would just like to understand that whole relationship better. One thing I'd like to also ask is if there was consideration for townhomes versus apartments in this area. I don't know if that would be more amenable to these neighbors in this area, but I think that there's been some good success with the townhomes that are directly west across 31. So perhaps this close to the downtown, that could be a consideration. The last thing, and I'll wrap up because I'll put a lot of this in writing. I've visited the kind of that research triangle in North Carolina, and they do an outstanding job of preserving trees and making developments look very natural. And I think that that would help the neighbors feel better, and I think it would help the community to feel better if somehow we really were able to use this topography, because it is very interesting topography on this corner, and the trees. We just had a neighbor talk about how do we want to be represented as Westfield, and there's a lot of opportunity on this parcel, I think, to make it beautiful. And so if we could look at some other examples around the country, because I know they're there, on how they incorporate green space and trees. Because again, I see a lot of green on this concept plan, and I don't see that in writing in the PUD. And so we've got to get all these elements matching up and make it a beautiful development and something that everybody's proud of. So those are my comments tonight, but I will be putting more of those in writing and forwarding those to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher, next.
Well, let me start with the big picture. The previous PUD did have big box stores and a lot of big parking areas. So this is an improvement over that. For the neighbors and people who are listening in, it's already zoned for fairly high intensity use. And although I wish we could take that back because I didn't support it in the first place, I can't. So one of the things in the original plan is I talked to Steve Hoover, who was on the city council, I think, and also lived in that neighborhood in the beautiful little white farmhouse there. And he said a couple of things. That number one, there was significant buffering against the neighbors to the north. And they are really the only neighbors directly abutting this. So they are very important. There was also a commitment, and I don't know if these were written or just discussed, that there would be some kind of tiering or terracing so that the buildings didn't go right up against the neighbors, and they also weren't extremely high. This land kind of goes from the south to the north, and it rises as it goes, has some interesting topography. And they were trying to make sure that the lower buildings were on the north and they terraced down, and the taller buildings went farther to the south. And also that the lower buildings were on Union and then became higher as they went west towards 31. So I don't know if that's been addressed or if that's something you can look into. The other big issue was the topography. The way the site would have been done back then was basically, I think, clear cutting and leveling the whole site. And you made the statement, several of you did, that you wanted this to be interesting and save some wooded areas. That's going to take significant planning and for the construction of this, if that's to occur. And I would hope that you would try to do that, because we have an awful lot of flat, uninteresting developments, and this has the potential to be very interesting. The other thing that's been stated, and I agree, is while what you plan on and your your statement of what you want to do here sounds wonderful, and while this plan here that I see before me looks pretty good, there are not enough details in the PUD to actually achieve that. Matt, I think, mentioned that there would be low buildings on parcel C in that retail area, and yet in your ordinance there is no maximum height on the buildings that can be in there. You also have an area, it's in B, that's supposed to be mostly office, and yet all of these areas, A, B, C, and D, will be zoned general business, and there could be office in none of them. They could all be retail or at least other types of business uses. So if indeed you intend to have office on section B, I would love to see that zoned as general business, or at least something that would get us general business with office. I'm sorry, not general business, general office, or something that in the general business that would ensure that there was going to be office in there. Because right now these could all be commercial and a lot of them could be retail. So this could be a plan that's entirely different. I have a whole lot of details on it, and I will write them on the ordinance and go through them and I'd send them to you. But I can cross out a whole lot of uses that you probably wouldn't want to put on some of those parcels, and yet you're leaving it open to any of those. Your heights are no maximum in area C and area D, which I would hate to see a 70-foot building or a 60-foot building on that area C. I think the buildings along Union Street should be lower in height. The buildings along A should be lower in height. I don't see a whole lot of buffering along Union Street. Again, it's just a concept plan, but I would love to see something so that keeps our small town appearance along Union Street and doesn't have, again, high buildings and very little in the way of landscaping. You talked about high quality development and amenities, and yet I don't quite understand amenities in this multifamily area. There's no mention of amenities in the PUD. Whole lot of other things. The minimum living area in these high-end multifamily is 600 square feet. I know you can probably do that, but when I hear 600 feet, I certainly don't think of real high quality. It could be, but then show me how you're going to get that, I guess. A whole lot of other details, but I think the big picture is, I think this could be great if it comes about as you describe it, but the ordinance doesn't describe it that way. You know, the black and white ordinance doesn't get us what your vision is. So I think that needs some work. As far as Westfield Boulevard and the connector, I agree with those people. Previously, behind those residences was going to be a nice buffer, not a road. I don't know when Westfield plans on extending that, or if they do, but it would be nice if it could stop and not go along there or be moved farther to the south to protect those residences that have been there for many, many years. So I will somehow get all of my comments on a copy of the ordinance and try to get them to staff so they can get them to Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on with Andre Maui's comments.
Yes, thank you. So to my knowledge, I think among the Plan Commission members, I probably live the closest to this particular site. I'm within a quarter of a mile, but not directly adjacent. So I can't claim that I have the same impact as the neighbors to the north and people that are even closer to me. But I will certainly see this every day, whatever ends up at that corner. And there's nothing that I would love more actually than to keep it exactly the way it is, frankly. You know, I love just the natural wooded area, but the reality, and this has been brought up so many times, but I'll say my perspective on it since it was the first thing that I noted when I was looking through these documents a couple days ago, is this is not a park or a nature preserve or anything right now. From a zoning ordinance perspective, it is a very high density, ugly, frankly, retail center as far as what could go there if circumstances today were different and the right developer, or actually I should say if the wrong developer came along and just decided that they were going to follow what was approved 13 years ago before I had any involvement in this body. So it bears repeating that you know, functionally from an ordinance perspective, that's what this piece of property is. So I was happy to see something being proposed with that neighborhood scale that brings it down a bit. And does have less of an impact from everything from traffic and all other aspects as well. I think one thing that's been a little confusing in the discussion is this whole notion of the Westfield Boulevard connector. And if I understand it correctly, and maybe we could get some clarity at the end with stating this outright if this is the case, Mr. Skelton, the proposed development neither causes nor relies on that connector. It's really an entirely separate matter. That's one being driven by the city, not by what gets done to this corner. This corner just obviously has to accommodate it going through. At least that's my understanding of it. So I would like to get that clarified so everybody understands the nature of the two separate but related topics. Having said that, I do agree with the desire for some really good buffering and screening that has been quite abundantly requested in the comments. I think the notion of terracing building heights, as Dr. Kelleher mentioned, is a very good one. I think terracing down toward the north in particular. Union Street also, but my concern actually is less there, in my opinion, than it is going toward the neighbors to the north. And then of course, the more tree preservation, the better, as much as possible. One thing, Matt, that you had asked for comments on or any feedback on is the idea of a parking structure. And to me, my opinion on that is structured parking with a high architectural standard, of course, is not only okay, but sometimes preferable to the huge heat island, large sea of asphalt of an expansive surface parking lot. So I think that can be actually a tidier package than just laying it all out flat. So that's my opinion. Back to you on that, since you asked for feedback on that topic. And those are all the comments I had right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor McCarty.
Oh boy, I don't know what's more difficult, going first or last. So without
You get opportunities all the way around.
I know, yeah. Without trying to repeat too much that's already been said, for the most part, I agree with a lot that has been said. When looking back at what's been approved previously in 2007 and 2001, it is a disappointment to look at that and kind of have the analogy of, okay, what was approved was you paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Not to bring a song reference into it, but that's basically what it was. And looking at the design, that's kind of to discuss what's not been brought up yet. The design that I'm looking at, all these exhibits, Exhibit C, for instance, not to say this against anyone else that is on the commission, but I am the only millennial here, and what I see is a lot of what is millennial driven, and this is what we're going to see a lot going into the future. So when it comes to mixed use development, absolutely, that is 100% improvement as opposed to what we currently have. What I would like to see instead, though, is instead of just flat out apartments, you have more mixed use of having stores, restaurant, whatever on the first floor, and then you have apartments second story up. Another concern that I have that hasn't quite been touched on either is, well, I don't know if we necessarily need an hotel or two hotels front and center right there. Much rather have another headquarters there. Of course, we can't set that in stone. But with it being one of the last remaining corridors that Westfield has on 31, I don't want to see this area to go to waste, just with apartments and businesses and whatnot. But we need something that will really impact our community in that regard. So yeah, when it comes to maintaining, preserving the forest life and just trying to maintain that as much as possible, trying to see if anything else I jotted down here. Yeah, something I said is, yeah, I agree with Christine that Ms. Berkman, we need something more concrete. I don't want to just roll the dice and say, oh, this is what we get, this is what was approved, but nothing really said what is the possibility. So, yeah. My AirPods just died, so I guess that's my time to be quiet and move on. So thank you.
Thank you. My first impression when I looked at this was kind of like several others. It's like, I'm glad it's not pine tree, and I hadn't seen the ordinance in a long time, but if you looked at the ordinance that approved this back in 2007, I was one of two counselors that voted against approving that. So obviously I wasn't particularly happy with that and felt we could do better. And I think something along this line is doing better. The next thought that came to mind had more to do with trying to determine, is the mix of uses really where it ought to be, particularly how much residential is right on our beachfront property of US 31. So you do all the market studies. I'm not trying to second guess you without having any real serious information that's credible to go on, but it's just a thought. Largely, I think that we're heading a direction that, of all of the times we've had proposals for this property, this is probably one of the better ones to start. But it is a start, it's not the end. And so we do need to see a lot of the additional detail that's been requested and try to finalize a narrower list of things that could happen there so that we can all get a lot more comfortable about the future being something that we can anticipate more accurately and not have surprises. I don't usually bring up things that really ought to be part of the TAC committee or somewhere else, like drainage that comes up all the time. But one of the things that did kind of strike me was knowing that there seemed to be some issues here regarding that there's very little water that's shown on the concept plan. And I understand that all that tends to be subject to change frequently when you're going through actual detailed civil engineering that knows where the water really wants to go, and you have to let it go where it wants to go or you're just going to have a mess. And there really wasn't that much more on the 2007 plan, but it did seem like it was more of a controlled flow. And I'm just wondering how much of an impact, when detailed engineering starts to really get serious on something like this, will we suddenly have blue surface water blobs, bigger, more of them in different locations. So how can that kind of drive what it is that we're trying to assess here? So I think with that, it's maybe time to turn it back over to the petitioner to determine how much of all of what they've just drank from our fire hose here and address these comments and give us a thought on what they see going forward and when they might, be back, and what of our comments really resonates, which ones they think maybe we're just not getting it and could help enlighten us a little bit better. So with that, the floor is yours again.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And folks, thank you for your input and your perspectives and your comments, along with, of course, the neighbors. I know there's a lot of folks that submitted written comments, and I certainly don't want them to feel like they have not been heard, because we have read every word of every comment that we've received. And so we can't thank you enough. And it's been very constructive, and it's been a good process. And this is, close to home to a lot of folks, and we totally understand that perspective. We will take the comments that we've received tonight. I think there was one request for a response this evening regarding Westfield Boulevard and whether this property is whether it is independent of this proposal. I mean, I don't know, independent may not be the right word. It's actually an integral part of this project. We've kind of built the project around it, and actually, I think that connectivity, the community has already determined that it's good for the community. So, but we're trying to figure out a way to make it good for Lantern Commons, and so this is a bit of a departure. We don't need to spend time looking at the old Pine Tree Commercial Realty plan, but if you do look at the two plans together, you can see the this is much more planned to be an actual connector, a community connector. That I think the Pine Tree project was doing the least amount of what it needed to in order to be able to comply with the city's connectivity requirements. So with that, we'll take these comments that you've and anything else you want to provide to us, and we will pull everything together. And I'm sure we're going to be, thank you in advance to Senior Planner Pam Howard, because I think I'm going to have to rely on her a little bit to work through all this stuff too. So thank you for your input. And if there's anything you'd like us to try to respond to this evening, we can. But I think with the lateness of the hour, it'd be best if we just took this information and started to get to work here.
Okay, thank you. Just real quickly, just to make sure that, because this is a lot to assess and it's going to be a lot to assess when it returns. And we want to give you the best benefit of this meeting possible. Let's do a quick round robin one more time to see if there's any final thoughts from the commissioners, starting with Dave Schmitz again.
Nothing additional from me, Bob. Thank you.
Good. Kristen Berkman.
Bob, thank you. I'm fine right now.
Good. Dr. Kelleher, you're going to write stuff?
I am. I'm good.
Nothing further. Andre Maui?
Nothing further. Thanks, Bob.
Great. Victor McCarty?
Thank you for the opportunity, but nothing further.
Cool. All right. Thanks to all on this. That concludes this one for the evening, and we'll get on to the Wheeler Landing PUD Amendment 4.
Thank you, folks.
You're welcome. So this is Wheeler Landing PUD Amendment 4, file number 2102-PUD-05. Caleb?
Good evening, Commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you tonight is an amendment to the Wheeler Landing Planned Unit Development District. The area addressed by the amendment is approximately 7 acres and is currently zoned the Wheeler Landing PUD District. The area is located generally at the north and west of the intersection of Wheeler Road and State Road 32. The PUD amendment proposes modifying the architecture, landscape, and parking standards of the Wheeler Landing PUD and UDO as further described in the staff report. This item was introduced at the January 11th City Council meeting. The petitioners did hold a neighborhood meeting on January 26th. A couple members of the public attended and there were no comments. This item is up for public hearing tonight, has been properly noticed and advertised, and staff has received no comments at this time. Eric Douthit with Church, Hiddle, and Antrim and other representatives are here to present details of the project. Both they and I are available should you have any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Eric Douthit, floor is yours.
Yes, Eric Douthit from Church, Hiddle, and Antrim, 116th North Union here in Westfield. I have with me today John Hart, president of J.C. Hart Company, Randy Sherman of Weaver Sherman Design, the architect of the project, and Andy Taylor from Kimley Horn, the civil engineer for the project. Caleb, do you happen to have the slide deck that we'd sent over earlier today?
Yeah, it's under petitioner's presentation. It's the last link there. If you have that pulled up, please.
Yeah, you can go to the very first slide, which I don't see quite yet, but that's okay. I think most of you are familiar with Wheeler Landing. Wheeler Landing was envisioned as a large mixed-use development in the heart of the Family Sports Capital of America district of the comprehensive plan. The Wheeler Landing PUD was approved in September of 2018. It's a 295 acre mixed-use development that incorporates 4 separate designated areas for development. The project being presented tonight is located within Area 1 of the PUD, which is the district that fronts the Monon Trail and Wheeler Road. J.C. Hart is proposing a high-end luxury apartments community that has been designed to create an urban feel along the Monon Trail corridor, which fits within the intent that was outlined within the original Wheeler Landing PUD for Area 1 and within the comprehensive plan. The proposed project is consistent with the concept plan that was approved as part of the Wheeler Landing PUD. The community that J.C. Hart is proposing tonight is unique to the city of Westfield and will draw from other urban projects Hart has completed along the Monon to the south. It was conceived consistent with the comprehensive plan with dense housing options and supportive commercial retail uses. Consistent with that contemplated dense housing option, the petitioner J.C. Hart is proposing to develop a high-end, and if you go ahead and right there on that concept plan for me, consistent with that contemplated dense housing options within Wheeler Landing, the petitioner J.C. Hart Company is proposing to develop a high-end 214 apartment community on 7.65 acres adjacent to the Monon Trail and just south of where the Westfield Washington Schools Natatorium and the future YMCA are. The use has already been entitled as part of Wheeler Landing PUD. We're here today to discuss the text amendments that are necessary to permit this innovative urban design contemplated by the original project that was proposed. These amendments consist of modifications to landscaping, architecture, and parking standards. This amendment, with the frontage of the Monon Trail, the design is orientated towards more of an urban atmosphere. Go ahead and keep it on that landscape, the previous one for me, if you would, the concept plan. Yep, please. So this is the landscape plan that you're looking at right here, guys. The amendment would permit the plantings to be installed in the areas depicted on the plan, including utilize the city tree lawns as shown on this landscape plan exhibit. We plan to review the landscape plan with the Department of Public Works to confirm that the species planted along each street frontage will avoid conflict or concern with any newly installed infrastructure. The attached concept plan shows how the urban character of the proposed layout addresses the Monon Trail to the east, the adjacent roadways to the north and west, and the future planned plaza to the south. It should be noted that the internal parking lot meets the required landscaping standard as written and is not an amendment to the standards required here. The proposed concept plan currently includes 1.93 park per unit count as designed. The parking spaces on the south and west side of the parcel are not included in the parking, but are planned as part of the construction of the project. Before I turn this over to Randy to discuss the architecture, I'd like to emphasize that except for the colors, the architectural character exhibits you're about to see will be incorporated and made part of the ordinance. Randy, if you could go ahead and talk about the architectural changes we're proposing to the Wheeler Landing PUD for this project.
Yes, so again, Randy Sherman, Weaver Sherman Design. We're the architecture firm for the project for the J.C. Hart Company. Our office is at 6201 North Carrollton, Indianapolis, Indiana, for the record. And is it possible to go back to the conceptual site plan briefly? Thank you. So as was mentioned by Eric, the proposed changes that we're needing to make to the PUD in the form of amendments is really due to the desire to make this more of an urban development for the residents that will be part of Wheeler Landing. And the reason we wanted to do this is to create an architecture where we have a city block of residential units that are essentially ringing the perimeter of the site on the south, east, and north sides, and would present front doors and front architecture to all the perimeter streets, and then put the parking and the private garages and public garages into the rear of the street, into rear alley situations, so that when you view the community from the exterior, it really presents the flavor and architecture of Wheeler Landing, which is an urban village. And if we look at the site plan, the road on the north, Virginia Rose, would be our main entry into the site. We would have a boulevarded entry between the two buildings on the north property line that would terminate into the main clubhouse and leasing center for the community. And you would have a 3-story building with elevators in it. Ground floor would be the amenity space leasing office, and the elevators would serve units that would go above the clubhouse and around each side of the clubhouse that would frame our main community amenity space that overlooks the main Wheeler community plaza space to the south of the property. So there in the amenity space, the clubhouse would overlook a pool, an outdoor courtyard that would have a grilling area, outdoor tables for enjoying the outdoor space, and the Wi-Fi that's provided within the community rooms of the clubhouse. The buildings are all 3 stories. The 2 buildings on the southern edge that would overlook the community green space to the south for the overall Wheeler development would have public entries to the buildings off the street that would tie to sidewalks that would eventually terminate to the east into the Monon Trail that would be paralleling Wheeler Road on the east to the right. These buildings have private garages on the rear that attach to community hallways within the buildings, and a few of the units in each of the buildings would have direct access to ground floor dwelling units from an attached private garage. If we could have the next slide in the other grouping with the buildings. This is the L-shaped building on the south edge of the property, the larger buildings that we were looking at. The top slide is illustrating the facade that would face the Monon Trail. The architecture of this building is broken down in styles. So if we go to the bottom of this slide, the building is broken up into essentially 3 segments. We have the corner building to the right in the red brick and has an Italianate style to it. There is a pedestrian connection between the corner building and the building in the middle, which is a different brick and masonry color, and then is broken down to a shorter building on the far left, which is 2 stories with a flat roof. And the idea is we break down the scale of the building as we approach the center of the site. And to the left of this building would be the central pool house and plaza courtyard that we were talking about around the clubhouse area. And then this building would mirror itself around that pool area and create the entire southern facade of the site overlooking the plaza space. If we scroll down to the next slide below, this is one of 2 of the rear views of this building that fronts the alley side of the development or the parking lot that we had mentioned earlier. We still have residents that will be overlooking the rear of the property, and in those public areas of the site that are more of the backdoor uses, we are still going to have an overstory of tree canopies in the parking lots, so that the second floor units that overlook the back of the property are looking into a green tree canopy overlooking the parking lots. And if we scroll down on this slide, this is the building type that is framing each side of the pool deck in the middle of the site. So the top image has the white outline, which is the section through this 3-story building that would have the clubhouse on the main floor and club amenities on the second floor, and then units on the 3rd floor. And that section of the building will have the elevator that'll gain access to all the units in these buildings connected to the clubhouse, about 50 units. And that allows the owner to kind of target a empty nester market and gives more options to those residents through use of the elevator and the private garages to expand his market beyond the millennial generation. Let's see the next slide. The next slide, this is the top slide is the north elevation of the clubhouse building. This would be the view that you would be driving into from the entry boulevard from the north. Clubhouse entry would be on either side of the center mass of the building through glass doors into lobby spaces that would be mail centers and the leasing office lobby space. And then the bottom image is the rear view or south view of the clubhouse that would be overlooking the pool deck. So the ground floor is a series of glass atrium doors that would open up to the pool deck and the grilling area courtyard. And the second floor would be the business center and exercise rooms overlooking the pool deck. And then the top floor would be a series of residential units overlooking the pool deck. And next slide. And this is the smaller type C building, we're calling it. And we have 3 architectural variants of this building, just to give us the variety to the street, to give that sense of the urban village that we're after, and to not have the monotony of multiple building types on the street. This building has a larger public garage in the ground floor of the building that has 12 parking spaces. That parking garage has 1 entry door that's indicated on the right side elevation. That entry door faces, again, the center of the site in the rear parking lot areas of the site that are treated as more of an alley condition. And that allows the rest of the building to have 4-sided architecture to it. Each of these units would have on the upper floors vaulted ceilings. We have a lot of bay windows, and this one is the Italianate style, and that allows us to not only look out of the units, but up and down the streets, the front streets that we're creating within the residential block of this area of Wheeler Landing. Next slide would be the second architectural type of building C. We can go to slide 6. And this one is switching to a stone and a shake shingle look. So, and then slide 6 is the same building type, more of a craftsman style with heavy trim and bracketing and a darker color palette. And that's a quick overview of the architecture of the community.
Thank you, Randy. J.C. Hart has, over the last 40 years, established a quality, well, there's the first slide. Thanks, Kevin. J.C. Hart has, over the past 40 years, established a solid reputation for quality residential projects in central Indiana, including a number here in Westfield. We look forward to adding the Wheeler Landing Apartments as an important component to the Wheeler Landing development. This is a high-quality, unique product that is specific to Westfield, and I really like what Randy's put together for us. We will work with staff to address any concerns that are raised tonight, and then bring this back to you for a final recommendation to pass on to council. Those are all the points that I have right now. Obviously, Randy and I will be here and available for any other questions, as well as the other members of the team, if you have them.
Thank you. We will open the public hearing part of this right now at 9:57 p.m. I'm not aware of any comments. Do we have any recently received emails or any people remaining at City Hall that are interested in making comments?
I have not received any emails in regards to this project.
There is no one left at City Hall but staff.
Okay. Well, we will give the clock a couple of ticks here to make certain that anybody that is listening and might care to comment has that opportunity. And then we'll go through commissioner comments starting at the beginning of the alphabet again with Kristen Berkman. That's a helpful perspective.
So can Dane go home now from City Hall?
And Kevin? No, Kevin's got to stay with us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we still have
Dane maybe
to
can.
run.
All right, one more tick over to 9:59 and we'll close the public hearing whenever that happens on my clock. All right, public hearing is now closed at 9:59. Kristen Berkman, do you have any questions or comments?
Just quickly, I just really want to compliment this. I really like the architecture. I really like the thoughtfulness that you just went through describing everything. I guess I just have a really quick question. Eric said something about it'll look like this except for the colors, and I guess I didn't understand that comment. I thought we were tying the PUD to the exhibit.
We are, Kristen. Kevin, can you go to slide 4 now? And I think, and Randy, you correct me if I'm wrong, we have created the color palette, but it wasn't completed in time for today's presentation. But it will certainly be here between now and the time of vote. And it has on it both the specific colors as well as the brick selections for each of these locations. We just hadn't made final decisions by the time we needed to turn it into to you guys today. So maybe
It's similar to what we saw tonight.
It's very similar. In fact, if Kevin, there it is right there. So this was the slide deck that we presented earlier today, and we'll make sure that we supplement with this, but it will show the specific colors, Kristen, as well as the specific brick and where they're going to go on each of those architectural designs.
Well, I think sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Randy. This slide deck that just got pulled up was just finished this morning, and it did have all the correct brick and stone colors, as well as the selected siding and trim colors. And we have recolored the elevations to illustrate where these different material colors will be going. So this should be our current proposed color palette for each building type on all 4 sides.
Well, I just want to compliment you. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's going to look fantastic, and it's going to look really nice on that Wheeler Road, which is such a main corridor going back to Grand Park. So thanks for your efforts.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to Dr. Kelleher.
I want to echo Kristen's comments. I was very impressed with the thought that went into it, including having the second-story residences look out over to the top of a tree canopy. I think that's just genius. That you really paid a lot of attention to detail. And I also want to thank all of you for sticking it out and staying this late. That's it.
This seems like meetings that we had years ago, all too much, except they were never virtual. But to make the record, we've got several more hours to go. I don't think we're going to do that. Andre Maui?
I think it looks good. I do not have any questions.
Does Victor McCarty have working earbuds again or some other way?
I'm on the iPad speakers now. Can you hear me?
Yes, just fine. I was kidding you.
Oh, no, you're fine. Thank you. I just wanted to double check. No, I agree with the sentiment so far. I think it's a beautiful looking project. I think it fits well for the area. Traditionally, I'm not too much of a fan of apartments, but, you know, I heard that keyword millennial, and so you're kind of tugging at me a little bit. This is definitely something I would say the younger generation aspires to, and I think this is just a great fit for the area with the Y and Portillo's and Chick-fil-A and everything else that might be coming into the future. So thank you for your attention to detail. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. I was concerned when we had the apartment discussion about the PUD in the first place, but just how much residential and what kind of residential would it be? And I'm really holding out hope that another type of residential that we talked about in a meeting a long time ago over by the airport comes to fruition, but that's not tonight's topic. But I'm blown away by all of this. I think this is terrific and have no concerns left anymore. And I think we're fine. So if there's no further comments, thank you for your presentation, and we'll move on to our last agenda item. Is there anything else from the petitioner, though?
If Mr. Schmitz had any comments, I did not hear them. I don't know if he was presenting, if he had anything to say or not.
No, just I appreciate the petitioner's explanations tonight and the thought that went into them, and then relating that to us. It's good to hear. So that's really it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're good. We'll look forward to seeing you back.
Thank you.
Our last item of the evening is Unified Development Ordinance Amendment 2101-ZOA-01. Councilor Spoljaric is auditing this meeting, I understand, but may still be in attendance to explain why this is on our agenda. Is that correct?
Hang on, let me stop sharing. Hang on. What do I have to do? No. We're trying to switch control of the screen here. Hang on. Aha. All right.
So will you be talking about this, or is Councilor Spoljaric part of this in some measure still?
Yeah, I think we'll.
I am here.
Yeah,
okay.
she's back on. I think I'm going to give a brief kind of introduction and then pass it back off to Cindy.
Yeah, I don't think I was supposed to be on this call. Otherwise, I would be giving the summary.
That's okay.
All right, so you're, as I referred to it, auditing the course, and you're just a fly on the wall. So Kevin, the floor is all yours. Wow.
I have a question. Since the council is presenting this, isn't she the presenter?
Yeah, I think it's okay for her to present. I think we've established that it's okay. So if I could just kind of give a couple brief introductory comments, and then Cindy, if you'd want to jump in as the presenter role, I think that'd be okay. So again, for the record, Kevin Todd, Community Development Department. The ordinance here before you does come to us from the City Council. It purports to add a duration to new plan unit developments before they would need to come back and be reconsidered if certain development milestones aren't met. This item is scheduled for and was noticed for a public hearing this evening. I will say that our new legal team is still in the process of giving this an in-depth review since it originated before they were on board with us, but they have expressed some initial concerns with this draft ordinance, and will be giving us a more thorough legal opinion in the coming days or weeks that I think we'll want to make sure we consider before we move too much further down the road with this amendment beyond tonight's hearing. So Manny, I'm not sure if you want to jump in now or kind of wait and get through some comment period, but anyway, I wanted to put that out there. So Cindy, if you want to take over from here and add some more insight, that would be great. Otherwise, that's the end of my comments. Thanks.
Okay. Well, you know what? I was going to say a few things first, but it became apparent to me tonight after discussing the Lantern Commons project why something like this would be very helpful for moving us into the future. As you can tell, here we had an old project, the Lantern Commons, that wasn't buildable. It wasn't happening. But yet it was still sitting out there, and somebody could have pulled permits before these guys came to bring their petition. So you can see how that does create problems. So one of the goals with this is to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future, or makes it less able to happen in the future. So like Kevin said, Brian Zager had drafted the language, and I wasn't sure exactly why he was tying it the way he was to construction plans and or the ILP. That's something I wanted to make sure with Kevin that we had that language tied down. Probably the most important part of this, when it was first introduced as an idea at council, they had wanted to make it retroactive. And because of state law and other things, and because it gave the development community major heartburn, that was taken out. So there's no retroactive provision in this one. that's kind of one of the key things. So I will leave it at that and see if there's any comments.
All right, thank you. It's here for a public hearing. So it is now 10:09 p.m. I know there's nobody at City Hall unless they've just rushed in, and there's no emails. So we'll give it a minute here to see if anybody, now that this is what's in front of us, has any thoughts to share. So the public hearing is open at 10:09 p.m.
This is Kelleher. While we're waiting for comments, I have a question for staff. I'm assuming this was advertised and all that kind of stuff so that developers and individuals had a chance to see this? Or how did we disseminate this to?
Well, it followed our normal notice protocols for UDO amendments, which is an advertisement in the paper. It also had an introduction at City Council a few weeks ago. So I mean, it's been out in public for several weeks now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kevin.
It is now 10:10. Probably close to it. It's just flipped over to 10:11. So this is probably not going to generate much comment. So we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 10:11 p.m. and do a round robin with commission comments. We'll start with Dr. Kelleher. Is there anything beyond what you just asked during the available time while we were waiting for the public?
No, there isn't. I'll wait to hear what Manny has to say, and if any of the developers will, come forward and make any comments, because I think that's what they were hoping for, was to get some input from the development community who this might affect. That's it.
Yes. Thank you. Andre Maui.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. So I'm in favor of this concept. When I read it, I thought that was kind of a unique approach to resolve what is potentially kind of a hot button issue, or one that we've actually seen in some ways. I'm glad it's not intended to be retroactive. While that could be the best of intentions, I think that's potentially underhanded and frankly unfair. So I don't think retroactive is the way to go. I'm still a little bit concerned, or trying to understand the way I read this. If a PUD, I'll say, expires, it doesn't really expire, but to summarize the language, to kick this into effect, it could go to the city council to actually replace the PUD basically with a new zoning. And I don't know, it's in my mind, that's just problematic to take something that went through such a process and then move it to a small body to say, okay, now you pick something different. Now, I'm talking on both sides of my mouth, because like I said, I'm in favor of doing something. I just haven't figured out if this really sits well with me as the right something. So that's kind of where I'm struggling right now. So interested in what everybody else thinks. Thanks, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Let me jump back in again. I agree with Andre. I don't know, I agree with the idea. I just don't know exactly what that part means, and maybe a better definition of how that works is important.
Okay, thank you. Victor McCarty.
Yeah, I concur with Mrs. Kelleher, Dr. Kelleher, and Mr. Maui. I think the intention is good. Just want to make sure everything is gone through a fine-tooth comb. And when I hear something like, the being able to assign a new PUD, etc., I associate that more with APC. So I don't want to have, any powers that are traditionally seen with APC being taken away from us, and just kind of have that process, for lack of a better term, being taken away from us or whatever. And so just to have the right mindset going forward, though, and I can kind of see this is where it's going, but just for those that might be listening in, would it be appropriate to say this is just basically a sunset clause in layman terms?
Okay. Anything else, Victor?
That would be it. Sorry.
Okay. David Schmitz.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think it is a sunset clause. It's just a matter of understanding the mechanics of it. And I think as Andre and Dr. Kelleher suggested, I'm not sure. I mean, this has to be drafted very precisely from a language, from a legal perspective. But I'm kind of struggling to understand the mechanics of it and what the burden is on the landowner. If it is something that has to be initiated by the council at that 6-year point, or if there's some burden on the landowner to do something within that time frame. I'm not totally clear on that. Part of it's just not spending enough time with it. It appears that the council can initiate a re-review of it that is like a PUD amendment. And then if that's denied, the council can change the district or change the designation. But again, I just think kind of a description of the mechanics of how this would work would be really helpful, knowing that the language has to be extremely precise because of the vested rights that the landowner has in the zoning. So the other thing, I did have a question. There's a sentence in section 2, the second sentence, all ordinances or part thereof that are in conflict herewith are hereby ordered repealed. And I'm just assuming that relates to ordinances in the future that would conflict with this once passed. But at any rate, I'm sure this will be clarified some going forward. That's all I would have right now.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman.
I'll just echo everyone else's comments, and I do understand why this is coming before us, because there's so many parcels throughout the city that have been zoned that we probably don't want what's there as the current zoning. And in a rapidly growing community like ours, so I think it's good to have this discussion to see how we safeguard ourselves for the future. So I'll just echo everybody else's thoughts on that. And I appreciate Dave's legal perspective on this too. So thank you.
Thank you. This isn't the first time this has come up. It has had discussion in prior years on and off. Obviously, it never went anywhere. I was not overly in favor of it. I can understand clearly, and we had the example that Councilor Spoljarek mentioned tonight about Lantern Commons being out there for so long doing nothing, and there were other things out to the western part of the township that were approved ages ago, not so much in PUDs, but in updated zoning before we started doing PUDs that just seemed like they were the wrong time to be doing these things. Like some of the previous comments, I would have a real concern with the elected body determining a new zoning standard at the end of whatever period of time that this might be something that comes into effect on a given PUD, that it seems like it more ought to just revert to whatever it was that it used to be, as opposed to taking a unilateral approach to putting a new classification on there. And I could certainly see if it's something that the property owner has had a vested interest in, what they believe is a land value in association with that zoning, and the new zoning that's selected downgrades it to a classification that would result in a less valuable property. There's going to be all kinds of problems there, and there's a country full of examples where things like that have happened in one measure or another. So I think that there are concerns that I would like to see addressed as well, and I'm really looking forward to new legal counsel providing their input on this. And if there's any comments that are to be offered tonight, happy to take just a couple more minutes before we all fall asleep and listen to them, or we'll just wait for it to come back.
Thank you, President Horke. I think for everybody's sake, I'll I'll leave you in suspense for now, but some of the issues were raised at the pre-APC meeting, and we'll obviously vet all of those, including the comments here, and provide a more robust analysis for your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, looking forward to getting it.
Hey, Bob, this is Andre. Sorry, could I jump in?
Yeah, sure.
Right here?
Please do so.
As I listen and continue to think about this, and it sounds like we have a lot of similar concerns, most of us. I look at this as, sometimes we talk about a PUD where it's not necessarily about the petitioner. It's making sure that what is in that PUD would be suitable if it becomes a different developer down the road, right? Because it's not tied to the petitioner once we zone a piece of property. Similarly, I look at this as, don't think about what the city council is today. Who knows what the city council is in 5, 10, or 20 years. This to me reads like the kind of ordinance change that could be used, though not intended right now this way. As on a vendetta, you could render somebody's property virtually unusable. The dangers of this, just, I don't know, my eyes are kind of really open to this sort of a notion of, hey, we're going to tell you, contrary to what we said before, now we're going to tell you it can only be this. And that just really bothers me. And I'm struggling with that. Although I do understand that a sunset clause, it can't just sunset and become nothing. It has to have an end to it. Sunsets back to what? I don't have the right answer. I'm just really uncomfortable with this one.
Right. Or go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah, Kelleher here again, and I guess this is a question for Cindy. Are you still on?
I am.
Okay. You guys talked about this, and I think we all understand that the basic intention is to not have something out there that's 20 years old that doesn't fit anymore. But do you have any thoughts on what the mechanics were going to be? Because I agree also with Andre's comments. I don't think we want to leave it to one body. It should go back to maybe a public hearing in the plan committee. I don't know. Do you know the mechanics?
I had always thought, Jenny, that it would go through our regular process like every other PUD or amendment does. I didn't think it was a council specific review in my head. So again, I did not draft this language you're seeing. I don't think I would have preferred it drafted exactly that way. And I have all the questions you guys do, as well as countless others. Actually, I've probably thought about it a lot more than some of you. Just like it's unclear if a minor amendment would restart that clock. I think there's a whole host of things to consider. And again, I know we've been talking about this a while. It hasn't moved. There's, lots of considerations. What we need is good legal to tie it up and to get us somewhere that we get what we're trying to do without creating, a big burden down the road. But again,
right.
These are all subjective rezones that we're doing with PUDs. And, they're essentially in agreement, when we wouldn't force it on them. I mean, they'd have to agree to it up front that this is how that works, because that's part of the discretionary approval of ours. So it's not a surprise down the road, if you will. It'd be right there in the zoning. So
okay. Well, I have a suggestion, and maybe for staff to think about too. Earlier in the evening, we had a petitioner come in, Mr. Dalton, who wanted to have us suspend a rule, and that we have that says if you withdraw a petition, you have to wait 3 months to come back. Maybe this document needs to have a set of how do we do that in here, just like the one we did earlier, that there's a set of if you're out 7 years, then A, B, C, and D, as a set of documents that says this is how you approach it. Because I think that's what everybody's uncomfortable with, was how do the mechanics work?
Right, and exactly. And again, I think that's really mostly the question for staff and legal to figure out. For us, is we're not sitting in an office and dealing with this every day like they are, and so it's hard for us to understand what works best in the process and what we are or are not going to see moving forward. Do you know what I mean? So,
sure.
I mean, I'd like to be able to help in that, but it's just I don't know the best way to do that within our process. When this was done in Fishers, it was done in conjunction with a full rewrite of their UDO. And so, for them, it was easy to create because they weren't trying to kind of pigeonhole it in. They almost crafted it around it. So
Right. Okay.
kind of the bill we have right now.
All right. Thank you.
Another aspect, sorry, this is Maui again. Another aspect is not only the what if this sunset clause kicks in and a landowner loses a previously agreed upon usage and it changes, to Bob's point, the value of their property. But if they have to go through the process, even if they're successful in keeping whatever the PUD allowed before, the process itself is not without cost. And so we are, in essence, imposing the need for somebody to, this is probably too strong of a language, there's a better word that Dave could apply here, but we're almost imposing the need for somebody to defend what they've already accomplished. And it just doesn't sit right, even while I'm thinking that we need to do something like this because of the outdated PUDs that go out there in the area. So I'm just struggling with the whole thing from both sides.
Yeah, and Kelleher here, and that's, I mean, for example, Mr. Dalton wanted to redo his PUD. So that means he has to come back and do another public hearing. So some expense, you know, if something doesn't proceed, I don't know if you can avoid some expense. We just don't want to take away large value.
Cindy, this is Kristen. How did Fishers do it? Is it 5 years?
I don't have it in front of me right now. I believe it is. I want to say, though, there was something in theirs that was 3 years. They had a shorter time in there, or it could have been Greenwood, and I could be kind of messing that up right now. But I've seen these in a multitude of ways, but as low as 3 years. So
do Carmel and Noblesville, do Carmel and Noblesville have similar ordinance?
You know, I'm not aware of that. I know at one point Noblesville was working on something. It's tricky to kind of compare along the road, just like with Fishers, because they have an entirely different process. So in terms of when different things kick in different communities and how that goes through, wildly different, you know, for processing. So, but the closest thing is our two neighbors in Fishers and Greenwood that have these provisions now that they have, not that I'm aware of, they have not been sued on any of them. Of course, I don't know if any projects have come up to that time frame. Fishers, I believe, was approved in 2018. Not sure about Greenwood. So they might not have hit any kind of issue yet for that to be a problem. So.
All right. We've probably worked this over enough tonight, unless somebody feels passionately. Was somebody trying to speak?
Here. I was just waiting. Would it be okay if I said something?
Quickly.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I agree. Listening to Mr. Maui and others, I agree with what was said, having difficulties with it, and more specifically with me, just going into it, looking into it, Section 1BC, again, just empowering the council to choose what PUD it then becomes, just doesn't sit, that's where it doesn't sit well with me, because then you're kind of leaping over the checks and balances that are in place. So, you know, just my thought is, and this might be dumb, I don't know, but if it doesn't gone through 5-6 years, whatever the timetable might be, then why wouldn't it just revert back to what it was before? And then it's just kind of a clean slate, start the process all over again. Because when we have something like today is brought to us with Lantern Commons, our backs are kind of against the wall a little bit of, all right, yes, we do have something that is better than before. How can we work to approve it now? So that's just my thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you. So that completes the business of tonight's agenda, and we are down to reports and comments. Do any plan commissioners have enough awake minutes left to make any comments among the members?
This is Maui. Quick comment. Just congratulations, Bob and Jenny. And Bob, thanks for keeping the meeting rolling tonight. And you'll do great. Appreciate your work.
My pleasure. When it's 10:30 and the meeting started at 7, I don't know how much rolling I really did, but this was a tough one.
Kristen, and I just want to echo that. Thank you. I thought you did a great job. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for putting your trust in me. City Council liaison, is Cindy still out there, perhaps with anything to contribute from council, or do we move on to Dave for the Board of Zoning Appeals?
I'll do that quickly. No meeting until next week, so no report.
Cool. Cindy Spoljarek, did you have anything? Are you still there? We'll assume there's no council report tonight. Community Development Department, anything to enlighten us with?
Yep, I'll be super quick here. We had a number of public hearings tonight, and if you have additional comments that you want to make sure get included in our issue list that we are going to be assembling for each of those, if we could have those in writing to the appropriate staff member by the end of this Wednesday, February 3rd, that would be helpful. We're going to try to get those issue lists out by the end of the week. That's kind of our normal timeline, so I just kind of want to, beginning of the year, kind of reinforce that. So that'd be helpful. And then Corey Harris, you may have noticed that he's not part of the meeting this evening. He has moved on, and he is in the private sector now. So we wish him well, and we will miss him. But I want to let you all know we will be filling his spot as soon as we can. So we had a I don't know if it's quite a record, but a very high kind of back-to-back filings. So we're going to be busy. You guys are going to be busy. We're going to be busy the next several months here. So with that, our next meeting is going to be a Tuesday due to, I think, the President's Day holiday, Tuesday, February 16th. So just watch for that.
Kevin?
That's it. Thanks.
Yep. Kevin,
Yep.
It's Kelleher here. Can I drop all my notes like in an envelope in that Dropbox outside of community development to get them to you?
Yeah, that's fine. If you could just send a quick email so we know they're there, we can pick them up. That'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
There's no other business to come for the body. Do we have a commissioner who cares to make a motion to adjourn? Okay, we'll make a motion. Go ahead. I was about to. Go ahead. Is that Vic?
Yep, I'll do it. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Victor, seconded by
Kelleher will second.
Kelleher. Okay. Roll call.
We're all checking at the chance.
Mr. Jorge?
Yes.
Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes, thank you, everyone, for your hard work.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
And Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.
I think it's past your bedtime, Pam.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night,
10:32.
everybody.
True story.
10:32
All right.
p.m. Good night, world.